Nice background there. That's Bitterfrost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Bitterfrost during the meta event, right? Just when it gets like really purpley in the sky.
Did you ever climb up those trees?
Yeah, you can do that. Oh, no. What I did was I teleported to a friend. I don't know if you know who Left is, but he actually climbed it himself, and I just teleported to him. So I have like one character set up at the top, like the highest. Like I can just log in and show you right now.
Yeah, let's see. Can I TP to a friend up to it?
Yeah.
You're in an A at the moment, aren't you? Let me swap back over.
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
Bye.
This is a really important topic, by the way.
I couldn't find one, and now I'm going back. Do that.
Yeah, so there I am. I would jump, but I don't want to have to.
Oh my god! It looks like a PlayStation game, right? Look at how that's crazy.
Dude, that triggers my vertigo a little bit.
Is that one tree that none of the others come that high?
Yeah, there's only one. Like you can see the tops of some of the other trees. Like this one over here, I almost got to the top of that one, but that's not even the highest one. And then like someone actually jumped from the top of the tree, and they looked at how much fall damage they did. It was like 20-something million or something damage they took from falling.
Really? That's insane, man.
It's pretty good spot. I might use this for like my like a scene in one of my montages, you know. epic environment, you know.
You haven't done like a roleplay montage for a while, right? Yeah. Where you like do it.
I've just been doing like gameplay ones, but my next one, stay tuned.
Nice.
What's it gonna? Is it gonna be like a monkey themed thing because you're in a tree?
Actually, I don't even know what the script is gonna be, but you know, we'll see.
All right.
Well,
yeah, stay there for a minute so that I can TP over. But yeah, if you want to do the pod,
you can party with me as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to log in because the server transfer's like taking ages. It says it's busy. You'll probably see me. Oh, there we go. I'm getting on now. Keep flashing on and offline. But is that the highest map of all of them? Like that's higher than
highest point
the other one.
Guild Wars?
Yeah, because they say that the tree in Dragon's Stand is really high as well, right? If I remember.
I thought that'd be taller.
I would say this is higher because I've actually just like sky scaled to like near the top of the tree. This is definitely.
Why do I want to sit there? I'm gonna put my mule character, my gobbler character.
Yeah, this is basically my second Ellie. So.
Yeah, I like how it has like nothing equipped or going on with it. Is it even 80?
Yeah, I think. No, it's 13. So, this is the safest spot on the map for me. I just die anywhere else.
Did you know you can't TP to a friend from Heart of the Mist?
Yeah, I did know that.
It says you did know that. Why is that a thing? I'm not actually in PvP. That's weird.
Because you're not in the same like realm, I guess. I'm not saying like from a lore standpoint, but from like a.
Yeah, a mechanical one.
Yeah.
I remember when Labyrinthine Cliffs came out, there was some error saying you are not in the correct realm anymore or something like that. All right. Oh my god, this is insane. Thank you. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. Just enjoy the view.
Okay. Can I use a portable rewinder midair?
You could actually, yeah. I think I have one too.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Oh no, I don't have one in my slots. It's just on my thief.
What's the technique for infinitely climbing higher? It's like sky scale.
You think you need to use Griffin?
Yeah, it's like Griffin going up and down, up and down, up and down. But eventually you get your energy back, don't you? And then you cling and you sky scale up, and then you dip between the two.
I don't know how to do it though.
Is the actual height limit up here as well? Oh my god, you can still go higher. This is mental. Good place to green screen as well. Holy crap. All right, yeah, all right. Thank you.
All right. So, Let's go back to the scene here. So we have on today's podcast, we have Angeels. He's the sole developer of Gods of PvP. Am I right?
Yep, that's correct.
Wait, is your camera bugged? No, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. And we have WoodenPotatoes, and he's like probably one of the most popular YouTubers. But the thing is, a lot of people know him for like lore, but I feel like he doesn't like that. Like, do you like being known as the lore guy?
Oh no, no, I don't really mind if people cling to the fact that they like my story content most, and that's the reputation I got, and that's fine. But there's never really been a pure focus of mine ever. Like, if you go back and watch my earliest content, it's always been just a range of different things. So, but if lore's the one that stuck, then lore's the one that stuck. That doesn't really affect the way I play or the stuff I do. Generally speaking, I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like you're the kind of like exact opposite of me, because I'm known as the PvP guy, but off stream, like, I do a ton of PvE, and people don't like know I'm basically god of PvE. And then everyone thinks of you as like the god of PvE, but they don't know that you're like playing PvP like 12 hours like off stream, right? So it's like we kind of create this like PvE PvP union where we create the content, but then we're just playing everything anyways,
Yeah, the yin and the yang, Vallun. That's what it is.
The best way to play Guild Wars 2, right? Play everything.
It's true.
Well, I say that I really do for the past few months more PvP than any other of the formats at the moment. Like, easily, I can spend way more hour in there than I can in the other, because you sort of exhaust, you bottom out in the other modes, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more repeatable, right? Like,
yeah,
just infinite.
And World versus World, I'm sure World versus World is pretty repeatable as well, but that doesn't grab me in the same way, like, at all. Look, it took me 2 seconds to complain about World versus World. Look, someone in chat as well.
Well, that kind of has to do with like the design of Guild Wars 2, where like the PvE is very, as you mentioned before, like the egg timer kind of idea. If you don't know what this means for the viewers, it's kind of like the idea of you can't really get too much value off of something by just constantly doing it, so you kind of like wait until you can get it again. And for Guild Wars 2, that's kind of like a daily thing, right? So you kind of create this schedule for yourself. You do all your daily stuff, and then you log out. You come back in the next day. And that works for a lot of people, but some people don't like that, right? Where they just want to, I want to get my sky scale, and that's the only thing I want to get, right? But there's all these like daily things that they need to do to get it. And in reality, working on the sky scale in tandem with other things is probably better, but some people, they like to well, this is another issue we're going to talk about, kind of immerse themselves in one thing at a time rather than kind of work on many things. But
yeah, the game forces you to diversify a lot. I don't know, Angels, have you heard of this? Apparently, I haven't seen the talk, but apparently one of the big World of Warcraft devs, who's now an ex-dev at the studio, did, I think, a big talk at GDC or something about how much he hates egg timer content and daily content and stuff, which is what World of Warcraft's all about now. But that's the thing I heard of.
I can completely understand that. Like, it takes away a lot from gameplay, and just it's not gameplay at that point, I don't feel.
Well, isn't that kind of the point? Like, there's two genres of MMO, right? There's the Sandbox MMO, and then there's the theme park MMO. And usually the theme park MMOs kind of, which is Guild Wars 2, WoW, they kind of tend to give you that less investment kind of content, because the audience that they're catering to is those people who just log in, they want to do something quick, have fun, and then get out without much investment in it.
Speaking of World versus World, by the way, when you get your diamond chest and you do repeat diamond chests, is it like getting repeat Byzantium chests in PvP?
Yeah, it's way less.
It is. So it is infinite, basically, in World versus World as well. You could no life World versus World, right?
Yeah, sure. But like,
but why would you?
Yeah, I mean, some people do enjoy World versus World, like the whole sieging stuff and running around as a group and stuff. And, fair enough to them. I think I'm long past that stage personally, but that's like the reward themselves, like the big fights, winning those, kind of like how the reward for PvP is winning the games and the rating. It's not so much the material rewards you get from the chests and whatnot. So
And that's,
There's a tax as well, like on WoW versus World, right?
I feel
it's less so
essentially-
nowadays. It's less
Oh,
so
okay.
nowadays because they've added a lot of, like, you get the gear, you can earn the gear whilst you're playing. There's basically free food. It's not best in slot, but like it's good food, and stuff like that. So it's way less taxing nowadays.
I think that's kind of
And
interesting how World v World is kind of like the sandbox portion of Guild Wars 2, because it is really the least structured kind of game mode. And if Guild Wars 2 were to ever do this kind of like battle royale thing, well, that's actually kind of structured too, but like a survival game, right? Obviously you have Southland survival, but like a real survival game, right? That would actually work in World v World in some way. I don't know how they, and obviously World v Worlders don't want this, but
They don't want anything. They don't want any change. You can't touch them as well. That's the thing. They did a beta weekend event as well that was essentially South Sun Survival, like across all of Metrica province. If I remember rightly, it was Metrica, where as the beta was closing down, everyone had one life, and there were like all these mechanics at play in terms of that changed your skill bar and your capabilities, and when you died, you went to the other team, kind of thing. I think it was. Anyway, and you kind of had to survive in an open world PvP thing in Metrica province. It's amazing how quickly that's like getting forgotten about, but yeah, that was definitely a thing. Also, by the way, if you're really going to say there's a sandbox section of the game, it's got to be guild halls, right? Like, let's be real. It's got to be decorating in guild halls.
I would like to see them extend that, actually. Like personal instances, I think would be a great way for them not to only monetize, but to add like rewards and content to the game. But yeah, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Do you not see that next expansion? I mean, a lot of people definitely do think next expansion.
I think it would make a lot of sense for them to do it, but I think it's I just don't see it as likely.
Why?
I don't know. ArenaNet has their reward structure and stuff. It's just not. Nothing points to that towards that, in my opinion. Like everything has become
the same for decorations in guild halls. Couldn't like the same arguments we used there. Yeah, we got those.
Yeah, I mean, sure. And you would think that the tech would be fairly easy to carry across, but I don't know. I just don't see it as likely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really expecting it
at this point.
Well, I think it would be good for an expansion, but I sort of don't care enough about it, so I don't really want it that much. But it's on people's minds. There was a really funny Reddit thread. I don't know if anyone saw it, like yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, where someone like supposedly was leaking.
Oh,
the
yeah,
next
the fake.
the creative writer.
And they just had so much ludicrous stuff on there. But even that,
race, like no way.
They said like there was going to be a new race, and it was like half Norn and stuff. It was totally ridiculous, off the wall. But even that had player housing on there. Possibly, in my opinion, one of the more plausible guesses that you could put.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't be. I honestly, like, if it came out, I'd be quite happy because I love that kind of stuff.
Do you think that they're a bit scared of it? Because I remember when WildStar was coming out, ArenaNet seemed to be talking to the WildStar devs about various things. You know the giant orange telegraphs we have in Guild Wars now? I'm pretty sure they had some like public posts where they said that was like a collaboration with the WildStar guys about like telegraphs or something. I could be completely talking out of my backside right now, but it was something like that, and they were like quite close. And then WildStar obviously did a lot for player housing, and ultimately the game didn't do very well. I'm sure for a billion reasons that have nothing to do with its version of player housing, but I wonder if that's made ArenaNet scared of the effort that would go into it and so on. Maybe they've looked at that.
I think player housing kind of will have similar issues to guild halls. That sure, it's really nice to kind of have them, but at the same time, it's you can't have the convenience there, else people aren't in cities, and if people aren't in cities, the game feels more dead, and it kind of has this knock-on effect.
Yeah, I agree.
And to get player housing just right, because either it's just like undervaluable or overvaluable, and it's at that point it's very difficult for them to, maybe that's why they haven't done it thus far.
They kind of have that problem with lounges at the moment as well, right?
Yeah.
Lounges is kind of like gets into the whole topic that I wanted to get into as well, because they're this convenience thing, right? But they kind of destroy the whole community and like feeling of being in like a big bustling town, right? Because you just sit in this lobby, right? And everything that you need to do, like all the crafting is right there, and all the merchants is right there, and it kind of like invalidates kind of like the wondrous world that they've created, right? And that's where the kind of like the issue comes in, is like as the game becomes better in one way, it actually becomes worse in another, right? And that's where the convenience versus immersion kind of comes in, right? Where if the game becomes too easy, you kind of lose that feeling of, you know, what it's like. But is that really necessary for those two things to be at odds with each other, right? Is that what immersion really is, to have to not have convenience, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think to an extent, yeah, that kind of is true. Like, I definitely feel like every time there's an update to this game or any other that's about, hey, get this easier, this is less of a pain, or it comes with applause, and, you know, you immediately feel the benefits of it. Everything feels smoother and more comfortable and less cumbersome. But it does come at a cost to stuff. Like, one of the main ones that I always think of, right, is when Guild Wars 2 came out, the devs were really stuck in the mud about camera controls. Like, they didn't want you zooming your camera out too far. They didn't want you messing with your FOV. They didn't want quite a few things. And then over the years, the community just kept saying, give us better camera controls, because people want it. You want to be able to see more. You want to be more aware. You want, you know, the game feels better moment to moment to have these, you know, to be able to out further. Even right now as I speak, I'm running around randomly in game with a max zoomed out camera, max FOV camera. And, you know, you feel that strength, but at the same time, the game does feel way less immersive and like way less of an adventure. I think that there are a lot of things in gaming where you put something in that seems to have a very powerful short-term benefit, but it does come at quite a significant like long-term cost. And that's nearly always the case for me when it comes to convenience.
I think this is something they actually realized. Web maps, like there are way fewer waypoints and stuff like that.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that they've kind of like cut back on. And I agree that is a really large portion of making the game feel more immersive, while not really taking away the convenience too much, right? Because you have to realize, what is it actually that you're gaining from taking the waypoints away? Well, it's kind of giving you this feeling of, oh, I don't want to die, because if I die, then I have to run all the way back. So in a way, it's not making the game easier to play, it's just giving you some sort of meaning to like death, right?
See, I wonder though. I think that there's less waypoints now just because there's mounts in the game. I don't think that they really thought much further than that. I think they thought, well, look, we want you riding around. They want you to have meaning out of riding around on the mounts, and the equivalent time you're spending traveling to a destination in the Path of Fire days with less waypoints but mounts is about the same as pre-Path of Fire, no mounts but more waypoints, right? I don't actually think they've changed their minds about that. I think they've got an idea of a certain amount of time you should be walking, and now the mounts are in the game, that would have contracted so much that they've made mounts, the waypoints a little bit more sparse. I don't know whether that's because they appreciate like this other side of things, you know, like the world feeling bigger and more immersive and stuff necessarily. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
But yeah, there's like lots of things like that, and Guild Wars is really interesting as a product because it's all about convenience in a way. Like I think people conflate that ideology with the idea of it being. I actually think the two are entwined. Guild Wars 2 pitched its tent about convenience and about access to things and about respecting your time, right? That's the boogeyman. That's the ever nebulous phrase that led them down all these dark roads, right? But respecting your time. And people, I think, interpret that to mean, oh, it's a casual game. But that's not necessarily true. It was always setting out to have hardcore elements and to cater to hardcore for mindsets and people that enjoy that kind of stuff. But it just wanted to respect your time as much as possible. And over the years, I think the two have just become one for most people, and they just think, oh, Guild Wars 2 is a more casual game, but that's not necessarily right to me anyway. You know, and that's why we see so much convenience, because they're just trying to respect your time so often. You know, they don't want what's a good example, like armor repair, right, and death penalty and these things. These are powerful, solid gameplay mechanics, good RPG mechanics. They should be embraced. But means you're not in combat, you're not doing exactly what you want to do right at this moment, so we're changing it, we're getting rid of it. When we're introducing raids, we're changing the idea that it's not going to be like these long atrophy style dungeons. Instead, what we're going to have is very stop-start little moments where if you wipe, all cooldowns are back, you're on the doorstep of the fight, you can try again. It's just all about the little puzzle of the encounter. There's no other factors at play, because to put other factors at play would not be to respect your time. Frankly, I'm shocked that Guild Wars 2 has food in the game in the first place, right? Like food, consumables, nourishment and stuff, right? Like that just doesn't gel with the rest of how they try and treat the game and think about the game. It's like there was part of them that thought, oh, do we want to make a good RPG? Yeah, all right, we'll do this, 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 and this. And then most of it got removed over the consumables, right? And that's still a tax on your playtime, because you have to buy it and you have to go to the trading post. Oh, isn't that cumbersome? Isn't that respecting your time? But it's in the game still, right? So there's food at least. But I wouldn't be. People talk about like a Guild Wars 3. If they did a Guild Wars 3 and it was all about the same philosophies and mindset as Guild Wars 2, I imagine they wouldn't even have that anymore, right? And then
I think it'd be a very large departure in general just from MMOs. I think
Do you really?
2, yeah, I think Guild Wars 2 already kind of is. Well, certainly compared to with release Guild Wars 2 anyway. And I think it would go even further. I think they'd eliminate a lot of the. I think honestly, just MMOs in general are moving towards this way. Like a lot of the daily time gates and just stuff like that. And I think Guild Wars 3, if there ever was one, would be jam packed with that stuff.
Yeah, you know. Sorry, Vallun.
Yeah, what would you think that if they could retroactively kind of like remove? You think they'd remove anything from the game or change anything that they don't remove or change now because it's just kind of like so grandfathered in, and if they try to change it, it's like it would be too much of a hassle. Like, you think there's anything that they kind of regret in that way?
Yeah, I think there's probably about 100,000 things like that. I reckon, first of all, you'd have less skills. I don't think that they'd have 15 skills on every character. I think they'd go way down on that. I reckon they'd go to maybe 6 or something. Maybe 8, because the first game has precedent for that. But I definitely think they'd want to put way less skills in the hands of the player and different builds and stuff. I think they'd want to really cut back on.
I think they wouldn't do underwater combat at all. I think that'd just be completely gone.
What do you think about
maybe
quests? Like instead of hearts or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the thing, right? Like, because I think that they probably have a lot of regrets about stuff, but I also think they're an extremely ambitious studio. Like, ludicrously ambitious. And I think that's probably been a cause of a lot of their problems. So, in terms of, juggling these other projects that got, the big cancels and stuff. So, I think that, you might be surprised. They might just try and eat the whole pie again. Like, Guild Wars 2 was insanely ambitious with everything they were trying to do with it. And I wonder whether that spirit, that heart at the center of the studio is still there. Even 7 years on. I wonder if it's still there and they would just still be trying to push for everything and just find a way to make it the best and to have absolutely everything. Maybe it wouldn't be culled away, But I've got to say, and you can see from how this conversation with us has gone here, it makes so much sense to me why we see like that they had that mobile game going on, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if you guys saw like different pieces of concept that he'd done for the project, and now that the project was canned, he thought it was fine to put them up. Someone found them on Reddit, they all got shared. It was clearly going to be a Guild Wars mobile game, like blatantly going to be a Guild Wars mobile game, and then it all got pulled off the internet and 404'd, and you can't get
really?
it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy, but we know that they were doing a Guild Wars MMO. Now look at this conversation here. Think about it. It makes so much sense. If they wanted to cull a lot of stuff away and the whole respecting your time and do as much daily gating as possible and all that kind of stuff, like that's the remit of an MMO, of a mobile game story, right? Like there's actually a lot of overlap between, and I can see
definitely.
why they would have thought that worked. There's just so much. The marriage of so many ideas kind of works in a nice, and yet they cancelled it, right? So this is what I'm talking about. Maybe that ambition, maybe that pure like true gamer sort of desire to see something really awesome is still there because they cancelled it.
I think that's, there's a lot of great MMO concepts that kind of have worked well and have been enjoyed by a lot of players. Well, not necessarily enjoyed, but like they've been a staple and they've worked well at keeping a game alive. And ArenaNet has kind of shifted away from those, and I don't know, it kind of sucks. Like the heart quests in favor of quests, or the hearts in favor of quests, right? I think they realized they needed to add something in to give players direction and have players do something different on the map. Because could you imagine how dead those maps would have been on release without hearts? Because, like, sure, you have the events, but events are kind of stuff that's going on around you. It's not something you go specifically to do, at least until they added collections. I think, it would have been very problematic. And instead of, they were trying to avoid this issue by adding hearts, but realistically, they should have seen this problem earlier on. And I think there are a couple of instances in the game where we've kind of had this. They've reinvented the wheel, so to speak, changed something up, and it's not been beneficial, really. Like how many iterations did like the trait line system go through, and stuff like that before they finally settled on something that just made more sense and was more traditional?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Guild Wars at its core is kind of like saying at the door to people, if you don't like the standard fare of MMO, come here, be different. Like at the gate, that's what they're saying. So I think that, like, to a degree, like, obviously you have to put your money where your mouth is. You actually have to do the thing that you're purporting to do. And I guess that the hope is, if you're back in 2010 or whatever and you're looking to release this MMO in a couple of years, the hope is that current MMO standards are not good enough, and that you do have a better way, and that the innovation is for something. Obviously, in hindsight, not all of it I think was worthwhile, but some of it, like I don't know whether it was a mistake, because Guild Wars would not be what Guild Wars is without any of the changes it made, and some of it's still very much loved. Like a lot of what we're talking about is from the perspective of people who play the game a lot, and thus you feel slightly a sting. But a lot of other people have got a lot of hours out of it and stuff. So I don't know whether I could say it's a mistake, but a lot of the changes they've made, let's put it this way, have been lateral changes, right? They've been sideways moves. They've not necessarily been progressions for the genre. Though that said as well, isn't it kind of true? A lot of other MMOs have sort of taken concepts from Guild Wars since it came out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Like stuff like the wardrobe system is extremely popular because like it's very easy to use and it makes sense and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think WoW's picked that up, right? And sorry?
Yeah, they did. I know you played ESO, right? Angeels, maybe.
Yeah, ESO has a similar system nowadays. So I mean, there's a lot of that quality of life stuff is kind of definitely on other MMOs nowadays.
Yeah, and you just said, that's like the way the wind is blowing for MMOs. A lot of games are going in that direction, and a lot of that was probably spearheaded by ArenaNet and what Guild Wars 2 did. And
I think it's
probably falls down on the little details.
Like that whole convenience of the wardrobe, I think, is absolutely a benefit, right? Like, you say you see a lot of people that are kind of championing classic WoW, and they just kind of like make up this example. Oh, everyone, your gear you have to get, it makes you look like this amalgamation of weird stuff, so that like it shows like your quests that you've gone through. And I just feel like that's so kind of forced, right? Like there's no real benefit to just not having the wardrobe, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, there's certainly other ways of expressing, like showing that kind of dedication or whatever. And we have that in the form of legendaries, more recently the legendary trinkets, which have this effect when worn and stuff like that, right? Like, you can certainly have skins that show dedication. It's just ArenaNet doesn't really do that much. And I think that's kind of where the biggest issue with the wardrobe system lies. It's that a lot of it has insane potential, and it's obviously this, like, it is perfect in a sense for any MMO because you can customize how you look, but ArenaNet hasn't really taken advantage of this for a lot of in-game rewards.
I have to say, I do disagree with the idea
Right.
that, no, not necessarily what you just said, Angels, but the principle that we mentioned a second ago, that there's no downside to having the wardrobe. I think there is a downside. I miss seeing someone wielding 2 incinerators, and I'm like, wow, that guy crafted 2 incinerators, and look, he's holding both the incinerators. That's badass. I think we lost something when everyone could just skin anything over. And I like the idea of seeing an item in a virtual environment and knowing it is the item. It's not like just like, the facet of an item skinned over a facet of another item, and it all feels very softwarey
it kind of creates scarcity in a way, which makes the items, because you can't put it on all your tunes, you can only put it on one of your tune. And I remember I used to really like the what was it, the Zodiac Daggers, and I remember buying 2 of them, and I was like, wait, I need 3 because I want to like interchange the stats as well, but I don't want to change the look of them. So I guess I don't know if that's good for the economy in some way, but yeah, I guess you're kind of right though that it does have some benefit to it, but probably not.
I there's a certain coherency and like solidity to like my consumption of the game when I look at like in Guild Wars 1, if I look at a guy that's wearing all black like dyed assassin armor, I'm like, that is he's actually bought or farmed the dye to apply to the item. The dye is gone now. That is what it looks like. That is the item itself. If obviously there was soul binding with these things, right? But if he put that in a trade window, it would appear as that item with that skin on it. Like, it is this real tangible thing that's not being manipulated through any like backdoor mechanisms. It's like fully integrated through various areas of the economy, and it is a real item. It is a tangible thing. In Guild Wars 2, it's just like, oh, so here you've got this, like, if I have a soulbound, or sorry, an account-bound ascended weapon, it's just like, it's like this intangible, okay, it's this stat swappable, skin swappable, sigil swappable representation of an item, basically. There's nothing solid about nothing. And so, yeah, economical considerations, I think there's just sort of an example of generally nice. Just applause every little constituent change I just talked about there. The wardrobe, the sigil swapping, the stat swapping, with a different experience at the end, right? Did Vallun just DC?
I'm trying to reset it.
So.
Oh no, maybe not. I heard it. Did I just hear his voice?
Hello?
Yeah, Vallun's back.
Hello. Is he
I'm
back?
just trying to reset it because it's lagging.
Oh,
Can you shift the region?
Yeah, everyone's cutting out. People saying in chat. Right now, or is the stream off?
No, stream's live still.
Oh, the stream is fine. Yeah, the stream is fine. I think it's just Discord.
Oh, I see. All right.
I moved us to Western Europe. I don't know if that helps at all.
But yeah, anyway, that's a good way of cutting off my rant. Anyway, yeah, I just think there's some value in it. That's all. You know.
Do you on that topic? Do you feel that maybe they've realized this, and because like legendary trinkets, you can only get one of them, and you see this effect, and these guys have the items, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they kind of brought it back a little bit with that, haven't they?
Yeah.
Maybe they do see that. And anyway, that's the kind of thing that I wonder, if there was another MMO from this studio, what direction would they go in? Would it be out the gate with a wardrobe and transmutation exactly the same? I mean, there's another side to it as well. I wouldn't necessarily have, it's not that I really have a big problem with it anyway, but I wouldn't necessarily have any problem with it if transmutation charges were like this very sacred thing to all players. But transmutation charges are so wonky in the game right now, where some players are desperate for them, and other players have just got thousands, And it's like,
if you play PvP or World v World at all, you probably have 1,000 minimum.
I think the one place that this doesn't exist is in legendary weapons, though, because I know some people like refuse to skin over a legendary weapon, even though it works out better for kind of like how their thing is, because of that whole meaningful aspect of, oh, I created this thing, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's still...
I'm like that.
Yeah, there's still like one of the best things about Guild Wars 2 that I think all players enjoy is kind of like creating a legendary weapon. Like even for casuals, it's this like long-term... Like you see on Reddit, like I've been playing the game for 7 years. I finally got my first legendary. But they like it, right? And it is sort of like this thing that kind of.
And I think
is
AIM
tried and true.
recognizes as well because they've continued developing legendary weapons. And honestly, I'm fully expecting a third set.
Yeah,
of legendaries.
it's also a really big shame that they stopped doing the first HOT legendaries where they had like a quest to them. Because I mean, some people didn't like that, but I feel they really missed out on that kind of like traditional questing kind of.
Well, Chaka and Chumpa was like really well done. It's probably one of the most exceptional pieces of content they've done in the game.
Yeah, Chuka is amazing. I remember that. That one's. Oh well, hold on though. The third generation, I got a kickback against that. They said blatantly no more armor and stuff. Why are weapons so special that they get more? I'm not expecting a third.
I think armor is different from weapons though, because like armor, like they have to do for different races and stuff. But like the weapons, like it's just the one model, so to speak. And yeah, then they can just
all
right.
All right, maybe you're right. I mean, I'd like to see that. It depends how long term they're thinking, right? And a third generation would be cool to see. Maybe they found a good rhythm with it, and they can keep going with them, and we will see a Gen 3. And not necessarily like bundled with an expansion or whatever. Like one of the big problems with the Gen 2 ones is that it was like, oh, I'm buying Heart of Thorns for Generation 2 legendaries, and then they came very slow.
3 years after
you probably
the
wouldn't
next
feel
expansion.
any of that. You probably wouldn't feel any of that anger if they just started coming. You know, season 5, they just start rolling in with even more. You know, just each episode there's a new legendary.
I reckon that's exactly what they're going to do. I mean, they've developed a lot of tech for the legendaries, right? Like, you know, Ziquatl obviously has the floating snake. Binding of Ipos has the floating book. They've put a lot of effort into those legendaries, and I expect there's a team that they've got, and it's kind of all settled and stuff, and they're just going to continue working on them. At least that's what I perceive it to be the case.
I have to say, one of the pettiest things, this topic's moved me into literally the most petty thing I would ever ask for the game, right? I'm sure we've all got like something that's completely inconsequential. But talking about transmutation, right? Let's say I make the legendary incinerator, okay?
Yeah.
And I skin that into the, you know, the gold fractal dagger or something one day, and I'm like, I don't really like that. When I skin it back to incinerator,
the skin unlocked. It should say skin unlocked.
Yeah, well, it's got the tag on the item that says transmuted or whatever. It doesn't seem to have any memory for what the original thing was, I think. Anyway, that I feel like it's not the incinerator anymore. I feel like it's been tainted because it's been transmuted at least once, right? Like, and I'm like, no, I want the UI to change to just this is just the regular legendary again. I'd like to be able to like untransmute, basically, I guess. That's such a petty, terrible, stupid waste of time for anyone to care about. And that's probably the top of my list.
What you could do is transmute it into the precursor, and that would look a little better. And then it would say it would transmuted from whatever spark or whatever. It would be better than whatever the other alternative is.
Yeah, that's the RP coming in there. I would never have thought to do that. That's why you're the RP god, I guess. Okay, Arophia in chat just said that I said meta battle
what
is
is this?
Someone said this morning, hey WP, I'm looking to get into PvP. Can I get any builds? And I think they specifically said, does meta battle have everything? Is meta battle good for PvP builds? That's what they said. And I said, yeah, generally it's pretty good. It's often a little bit out of date, but I think it's better than it often gets credit for. I said it usually has pretty good utilization information for the builds. And yeah, you're usually a couple of shades away from the actual build, and it can be a bit out of date. I said meta battle's pretty good. I said the other really good resource is Gods of PvP, which is way more update and probably is my first recommendation. I said, but Gods of PvP doesn't tend to have the same variety and less utilization information. That's what I said. I stand by all of that.
You saved yourself there. I was concerned for a moment.
Yeah, no, Gods of PvP is the first place that people should go, definitely. But if you're looking for something a little bit more obscure, a little bit more out there, or if you're completely lost about a build, you can't get around the fact the meta battle has quite exhaustive sections written under there saying, oh, this is what your elite spec does. You know, it's much more noob friendly in that way. So yeah, but Gods of PvP outside of the build section, you know, smashes anything else, right? Like it's got so much extra information and worthwhile stuff for people to know.
There's also another resource we need to mention. That's Vallun's guides.
Oh yeah.
What you mean?
Do you want to plug those a little bit there, Vallun?
Yes, your Vallun's guides on YouTube.
I mean, I guess if you're looking for like off
you're
meta,
a true salesman.
The difference between meta battle and my off-meta builds is my off-meta builds are like, they don't try to be good, right? They're good, but you know they're trying to be like whatever they're trying to be. Like the meta battle builds are just kind of yikes sometimes.
Yes.
It's
what's
like
what's an example of the most yikes meta battle build that you've seen? Because I've not had a really terrible experience on the website.
it just like shows a
Ooh.
complete misunderstanding of what the build is supposed to do, right? Like they use like the wrong utility or like the wrong sigil.
But like what? Give an actual example though.
Okay, so back in POF release,
Yeah.
okay, this is when they still had like a rating system. They had Dragon Hunter and Core Guardian at the same level, and it was just like, no, Dragon
really?
Hunter is like objectively worse in pretty much every level than Core Guardian at the time.
So do you think that the biggest weakness of that website is the rating, the the tiering?
Yeah, like I mean, this is kind of what I said when I created my site, right? Like, it's 100% that. Like, it's what you need is someone to just tell you this is the right build, and if you don't want to play the meta build, that's fine. You can build your own build, and that's a perfectly valid way of playing the game. And it's something people enjoy doing. I think it's honestly something people should do more. Because it's how you just screaming in the background. Is how you learn the game, right? Like reading the traits, going, why am I picking this trait? Why am I picking this trait? A lot of people just look at the meta build and go, well, these are the traits, and then don't look at the traits, don't find the synergies, don't pick up the play style, that kind of deal. And it's not great, right? And it's why the first piece of advice I put on like my guides is read your traits, read your skills, because it's so important. So important.
It hasn't happened for a long time now, but if I'm on a build that is completely alien to me, like I've got absolutely no understanding what's going on with it, what I used to do is I'd play a couple of games, getting familiar with the skills and like the flow of the class. But then for the next like 15 to 20 games, I'd like play a game and like mouse over some traits and be like, okay, what was this one? And just like really try and, because you got like 18 traits to remember. You got a lot of different passives going on. And you just keep refreshing yourself, keep looking back, like, what was this minor doing? What was this minor doing? What was this GM? Just over and over and over again. Like that's definitely something anyone should focus on if they're getting into a new build or something.
Yeah.
I saw a stream with someone who'd never played Reaper before the other day, and they were streaming this Reaper. They had no idea what any button did. That just looks amazing to me, because I'm like, can you imagine if there's something you'd never played? It would be like an expansion's just come out, wouldn't it? It would be like the devs have just added a whole new elite specialized. I'd be on that instantly. But you get these totally new experiences for people, and there's like so many of them that you can have at this point. And you know that there's just like this long period of looking at every passive and stuff. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. What were we talking about? I don't know. I can't remember.
I think it was the wardrobe, right? And then we got segued on to
Gen 3. Unless you guys want to talk about gods of PvP or whatever.
Well, I don't know. I don't really have much more on that topic, I don't think. I do think that Gen 3 is... I will be happy to see a Gen 3, but I'm still a little bit cynical it will happen, honestly. The other reason I'm a little bit cynical it will happen is because of that blog post that came out on the 2nd of April this year, where it really kind of sounded like the devs were saying, look, there's stuff you expect from every patch at the moment, and maybe don't expect so much of that going forwards.
Oh, is that like the maps not being in part of LS5?
Yeah, they're basically saying, look, we're leaving ourselves open to be a bit more freeform with the kind of patches we put in. So maybe there won't be a map every patch. Maybe we'll expand a different map. Maybe we'll do whatever. So it just sounded like they were looking for wiggle room to not have such a massive list of things that they're trying to deliver every Living World episode. And I kind of feel like, you know, a Legendary must be a part of that list, right? To an extent.
Well, Legendary's always been done by different teams, so I don't know, like, maybe. I think it's certainly possible, right? Like, if they're... I think, honestly, them not doing a map each time would be beneficial to the game. But, yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, they've said nothing about LS5, which is actually quite bad in a way, I feel, because it should certainly be something they start ramping up about with how much they talked about the last episode of LS4. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
It's interesting, the whole new map thing, because I remember so desperately wanting new maps. Like, I remember all the way through Season 1, just thinking, oh, we're not getting to explore places, we're not getting to go anywhere. I remember when Heart of Thorns came out, when season 2 came out, there was only 2 maps across the whole season, and they were kind of smallish by today's standards. They felt big. They were very exciting. I remember when Heart of Thorns came out, there was only 4 maps, and I just remember thinking, we're never getting anywhere, we're not doing anything. And then season 3 landed, and ever since season 3, it's just been like insanity. It's been like a new map every episode, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then this expansion that rolled out. Do you remember there was a tiny gap between season 3 and POF, and then a tiny gap between POF and season 4? Like they did so good with it, and there were these enormous maps that just kept coming and coming and coming. And now we're at a point where people are like, yeah, enough with the new maps, which it feels like in the blink of the eye we've sort of swung the pendulum from one side to the other. Maybe that's a thing.
I think honestly it's just because a lot of the new maps that do come out are just devoid of content, really. Like, I mean, I'll tell it as I see it, right? You compare the maps to, say, the HOT maps. I mean, admittedly the HOT maps did have a rework, but even then, like, they don't have anything to keep me in the map. Like, why would I ever go back to Bloodstone Fen after I've completed Aurora? I just wouldn't. Like, there's no point. And I think that's true of most maps. I don't think I've visited one of the LS3 maps since the end of LS3, and I did Aurora. So, I would rather they just put in quality maps with like good content that is repeatable and that I'd want to go back to, because I go back to the HOT maps all the time because they're fun. They've got fun methods and stuff. And certainly with the POF meta revamp, with the rewards and stuff, those are fun to do as well. So I think that's the way they should be going about it. Like quality maps with lots of content and things to do and collections and stuff like that, instead of just kind of the lack that we kind of have with the living story maps.
I think that has kind of the issue with the whole like gold is the universal currency, and that's kind of where you get everything. Because I remember in Guild Wars 1 there were very specific skins that you could only get from going to certain places, and you had a reason to go around the world to get them. And that's kind of how it is in Guild Wars 2 as well. But I feel like, if they did have these kind of like, if the wardrobe didn't exist, first of all, maybe that's another reason why the wardrobe might not be a benefit, because you'd have to keep going back to the map if you want that skin again, right? But if you unlock it permanently, then you never have to go back to that map. So it's kind of like... My mic is doing weird stuff. But yeah, basically kind of give players a reason to go back by making kind of finding this reward that they can't just get once and then be done.
Yeah, I got to disagree again with both of you. What do you mean? Gold is not the global current. Look, the thing is, the Path of Fire maps is not about the content at all, and the Season 3 maps is not about the content. Content's good. The content's varied. The content is pretty bulked out there. It's not a problem. The problem was the rewards with the Path of Fire maps. They didn't feel rewarding to do. The rework we just saw was an entirely reward-centric change. The Heart of Thorns maps are still thriving because of how they integrate into machetes and crystalline ore and all the rewards that come out of that, and earning Generation 2 legendaries and stuff. I feel like it's kind of unfair to say that the content in Season 3 and the content in Path of Fire and stuff is so much worse or whatever, or isn't worthy.
I don't agree with you there, actually, because I think let's compare 2 meta events, okay? You've got the Pinata, right, and the bit before it in Crystal Oasis, and you've got Tangled Depths, okay? Honestly, the big reward in that event is the chance of getting the infusion, okay? And they're pretty rare, and they have like a 25k street price and stuff like that. So it's pretty exciting, right, to try and to get that RNG roll. And aside from that, they're not really that rewarding. Sure, you get the daily chest from it, and you get some extra greens and stuff. I think TD's a little more rewarding in that regard. But apart from that, they don't really give you anything. But TD is way more popular than Pinata.
No, they do give you stuff. Leyline crystals are actually quite a starved Heart of Thorns currency. I think that they do give you a lot. And both give you a crazy infusion. Both the confetti infusion and the Chak infusion have both been exciting things that propped both metas up. I do think you're right, actually. I do think that the Path of Fire metas, in terms of actual quality, are worse. I do think they're worse. I think that, like, the Desolation meta event, the Moors, that's just a couple of escorts, and then pressing
It's
F on
extremely disappointing.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's nothing. And you look at Chuck, the Garen. I mean, come on, that's like the god meta. That's the best meta they ever did. Tyria is incredible. So you are right. The nighttime meta. I think the content is better, but I think largely the reason why Path of Fire has not had the activity, the profound activity for the years that it's been out and for the future years, I think has been rewards. I don't actually think that players think very carefully about the content they consume, and I think they just care about their motivation to do it, which is rewards more than anything else.
Yeah,
and
that's certainly true.
And so that's one little thing. The other thing I disagree with is the idea that gold is the global currency. Like, if you're motivated to go for lots of different things in the game, gold won't get you that far. Go, so for example, I want to get all the minis at the moment. I've gone back only because I want to get all the minis, which I appreciate is a completely unexciting thing for most players. So again, it's about motivation. Let me just be very clear. My principal argument is that it's not about the content or the variety. It's about people's motivation to do it, right?
A karma apologist?
Yeah, but if you're motivated to do the content, I've spent the past month playing loads of stuff throughout all the seasons, all over the place, that would be impossible for me to get without doing the content, because I have to finish that heart to get access to the vendor. I have to do that map to get like petrified wood or diafluorite crystals or whatever, and I have to have the karma on top or whatever to buy that mini or to buy whatever. There's so many different things in the game like that where it's like, no, you have to actually go to this specific area and do this specific thing. Like 90% of my playtime right now is going to totally different areas of the world to get different currencies, to get commendations or racing medallions or whatever, stuff out of current event rifts and things. I have to go to specific places all the time. It's not like I spend all my time just earning gold in the Istan farm or the Dragonfall farm, and then therefore I've beaten the entire game. It's nowhere near that level. I have to do a vast range of things.
But
if
is everyone doing the same thing as you? I would think that the majority of
no, barely anyone is.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Barely anyone is. And so that to me is the discussion. It's not actually, the devs don't have the good content, and it's not actually, gold bypasses everything. Neither of those things are true. What is true is that people don't care about interfacing with what's beautiful about Guild Wars 2. And that, I think, is born out of the convenience, and there's quite a few layers to that. But yeah.
Like, the original idea was like that people didn't feel like there was a reason to go back to a map. So yeah, you kind of do have your reason to go to the map for all the minis and stuff, right? But once you do complete all of that stuff that you want to unlock on the map, there's really no reason to go back.
Yeah, they do bottom out. That is true. They do eventually bottom out. I'm not sure whether that's a new problem either, though. Is that a new problem? Isn't that true for Fireheart Rise? Isn't that true for Iron Marches and any number of vanilla maps? Not every map is born to have infinite replayability.
I mean, that's certainly true. But I do feel that, those are kind of release maps, and there is some expected decline in their use, right? I do feel that some living story maps, there should be. There should be I should be able to play those maps for the entire season and be excited about them each time. Have something to go back to, and I do feel that ANET should be innovating on kind of this situation and going, yeah, okay, players are complaining that these maps have little to no replayability, but they aren't at all.
Well, hold on. You said so you're willing to afford the luxury to core maps that eventually you can move on from them.
Yeah,
surely you afford that luxury at some point to season 3 maps. And
yeah, I do feel that for the entirety, for a season, okay. So
you want it to be replayable for the season, right? So now my question is, did you not for that season then? Sorry, the mic's gone out a little bit.
No, not really, because aside from Aurora, which was added at the end of the season, okay, there was no reason to go back to them. But
what did it do? You went back though. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like if an episode comes out, you play it. You get a ton of the stuff in it, and you skip getting a lot of the stuff, which, let's face it, most players do. They skip getting the minis. They skip doing a lot of the stuff. and then at the end of the season you go back. We had the same with season 4 here, right? Like, weren't all the maps just reinvigorated by the release of Vision?
Yeah, I feel like the Vision, like the legendary trinkets are really good, but the thing is, like, the implementation was kind of weird because all 3 of them have the same animation. So unless you want the, like, whatever the 3rd animation looks like with the combination, like, getting one or the other is kind of pointless unless you want a legendary trinket. Did I cut out there?
No, we had. Yeah, I think you're right about that. But maybe that's a discussion about the specifics of how they did the trinket. The season itself, though, they surely infused.
If you do want the trinket, though, that is a really good thing, right, for making you go back and do all that content. But maybe the reward could be a little bit more universal in some way. But then again, that's kind of difficult.
I will say, Angels, as well. I was very hands-off on season 4, like very, very hands-off. Someone in chat just said that the maps felt quite cookie-cutter. I definitely felt like the season 3 maps were pretty varied, like obviously you're going to different areas of the world, but even within like each map, look at Bit of Frost Frontier. It wasn't just snow everywhere. It was like you had a cool hot spring, you had a cool forest and stuff. And then this new season, it feels like, and maybe it's fine because we're all in that area of the world, but it does feel very much like, okay, they're reconfiguring assets that I saw in the expansion itself, and it's just generally the same kind of resources that I'm looking at all the time. And it feels a little bit more generic. I will say that about season 4. It's not that they're infallible. I just think that, there is some replayability there. Or enough. Let me put it that way. I think there's enough replayability there. Death Branded Shatterer you could be doing for that special infusion.
I think honestly Jahai and Dragonfall were the 2 good maps that came out of this living story. Okay.
You don't like Istan for the Istan farm?
No, I think Istan's a really bad meta event. I think it's just running around and kind of pressing F.
I hardly touched
that meta, by the way. Sorry, you want to defend Corner?
Yeah, I would like to see someone defend it because it's like widely accepted as like the worst map.
Yeah, Corner is a pretty low bar, right? Real, I don't know.
Honestly, I didn't mind going back and doing Corner for the Vision, but that's kind of because I could do it quickly, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I think I on your point, WP, about like they did bring me back to the map with like stuff like Aurora and Vision, but like that gap in between, obviously we knew that there would probably be a LS4 trinket. That gap in between the beginning, say, of when Istan came out and I kind of played it, I did the 7 days time gate for the astral weapons and that kind of stuff. And then I just left the map and never touched it for like however long it was until the end of the season. Like, I don't know, sure, I came back to the map, but am I going to go back to the map again? No, because it doesn't have, like, maybe that's just a me issue that I don't feel that the content is good, and others do. That's fair enough. But for me, as a player, I don't feel that there's anything there for me in that gap between until Vision came out, and now going forward, now that I've finished Vision, it's just... Yeah. I think that's where my issue lies with that stuff.
I could very well have been in the same boat as you. The thing is, for me, I became very uninterested in getting all the achievements and really being completionist about any episode. I became very uninterested in it throughout season 4. So I would kind of gloss over a patch. I'd do it, I'd do the story, which I was really interested in, and I would play while it felt new. And then I would kind of not really look at the map very much. Now I'm in a position where I've got all this stuff to do on the maps, so I'm going back to them, and I feel really invigorated with it, and I feel like there's loads to do and there's loads going on. But I may, if it hadn't happened that I was disinterested earlier in the year, I may well have been in the exact same boat as you right now, where I'm thinking, Corner, I did that like 7 months ago, 8 months ago. What? It's a rubbish map, But I think there's an argument here, though. What do you think about the idea? Is it okay? I'll just propose this. Is it okay for a map to release with a high population, and it's this really exciting thing in the moment, and then it kind of goes away, the experience of it and the meaning behind it and the desire to go there? Is that such a bad thing? That's my question. Is that because people are naturally predisposed to Zerg to the latest content anyway?
Yeah, it's certainly very true.
So embrace it, go for it. Just whatever. We'll give them content.
I mean, I guess so, right? Maybe it's just my attitude towards the maps. It feels like a season, right? I feel like I should be enjoying the content for that season. Maybe that's just my perception that's wrong, or like the wrong approach, so to speak.
Well, what actually changes in a map when it's unpopulated versus populated? Because isn't most of it kind of like soloable anyways?
And it scales. Well, I mean, you're playing an MMO, so you're sort of craving player interaction, and I think it is dangerous to constantly have your players in maps where they don't get much interaction and they're expecting it because it makes them feel like the game's dying or whatever. Someone in chat just had an amazing point. Maybe Corner is the best map, guys. Corner is the best map because Corner is the beetle map. So if you want all the mounts, you got to do Corner, baby. Corner has infinite replayability for the player base because you've got to go there for that beetle. You can skip the others, but you got to go do Corner. Thoughts? Corner is the best map?
I don't know. I think that's trying a little too hard.
Well, you say that now, but in 2022, and Corner is the most played Living World season map for that reason. You'll be laughing out the other side of your face.
No, I agree.
The sky
But
scale.
that's
I mean, the
kinda
sky
like the
scale
only-
as well. It's not just about legendaries. The sky scale is pretty epic for going back to those other maps, right? Like,
Yeah.
It maybe the thing is, right? Maybe it's that the unifying force that is your motivator to go through everything is coming at the end of a season instead of at the start of a season. But
yeah, maybe what they need to do is something like what you're doing, where they have this like Guild Wars 2 master, so to speak. And you have a collection where you get all the rewards from a map. Okay, and you get a title and some achievement points. You know?
There's like an umbrella kind of thing.
Yeah, I genuinely do feel that these umbrellas are pretty good. I mean, it's Sky Scale, Vision, Aurora, the legendary armor for raids, coalescence as well for POF raids. That's the kind of stuff that keeps people motivated to do stuff. And I think ArenaNet doing more stuff like that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. And can kind of come at a low cost in terms of dev time if it's just a title and some achievement points or stuff like that.
There was a post from a dev back during the Living World Season 3 days talking exactly about this, that they wanted to do like this umbrella thing. I'm not sure if sort of eventually the answer they came to was the Aurora sort of setup. Because in a way, it's all well and good me saying, oh, it shouldn't be at the end, it should be the start, so we're feeling the whole way. But how does that work? Like, what people know? I mean, what are we talking about here? Okay, so here's your shopping list of all the different things to do. People are just gonna zerg it while the content's fresh, and then the season's gonna end, and they're not gonna go back. And it can only work at the end of a season, can't it? In a way?
Yeah, no, I did think about this because I was kind of frustrated that because I had to do some of the Dragon Blood's weapons, and I was hard time gated, and my RNG was bad, and I was frustrated. I was thinking, yeah, realistically, the only good time for them to release this is at the end of the season because it keeps the maps alive, which is it's kind of its intended purpose, right?
Yeah.
And makes sure that people have all the expansions and stuff like that. It's not the expansions, but the episodes. Yeah. So it makes sense for them to do it then. But I think per episode they could 100% do this. Like they have different tiers of stuff. They have you complete all the achievements.
The meta achievement. That's an umbrella.
Yeah. And then they have like the episode master, so to speak. You've collected all the Dragon's Blood weapons, exotic and ascended. Okay.
Yeah. And like there's no Astral, right? Astral and Stellar, they never did a collection for. They put stuff in the game and then they basically say it's okay to ignore this, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of find that to be like one of the more interesting things. Even like some players I know, they'll be like, "Oh, I just want to get all the astral weapons," and then you ask them why, and they just like them, right? And then another person may not want to do all the astral weapons. They do another thing. They're the mini person, right? They collect all the minis, right? So I think it's pretty interesting to allow someone to, and this is an issue that we have, right, with Guild Wars, with the whole egg timer thing. It doesn't allow players to kind of like go hard into one aspect, but in reality that's kind of what players sometimes like to do. They find their quirks and they go for them.
What do you guys think about having every episode then with a big umbrella type feature that essentially says get absolutely everything? Because then aren't the devs isn't one episode going to be way easier than the next? For example, like if they had done that on this season, wouldn't people then interpret Istan to be a way better map just because it's got like this thing that takes ages to do versus the very next map, Sandswept?
Well, what would you be giving with the umbrella? Because then people would just reinterpret that to be the meta instead, right?
Yeah, they would. I mean, and what this is the thing. The umbrella of umbrellas in Guild Wars is AP, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's all they've got, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
AP. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything else that they could do unless they put like a back piece or something. But I mean, here's one of the things I was going to touch on earlier. The game has got so many skins now and so limited slots for your skins, and it's also freely swappable and whatever. It's kind of hard to like a helmet for doing everything, everything. Like,
I mean, that's I think the best reward slot for them is infusions and stuff like that. Like, hands down, I think that's just, that's why they kind of expanded into that in the first place with like their prestige, well, not prestige, but like expensive rewards, right? Like Chak egg sack and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be
Coda's
surprised.
Warmth was pretty good in season 3, if I remember.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of that kind of stuff in the future.
So I've got another question. Given your experience there, Angeels, where it was really frustrating going for the Dragonblood's weapon, are you actively thinking now for season 5 you're gonna make sure you get them cleared as they come out? Because that's like what the devs are looking for in a way, isn't it? Because that is, again...
Yeah, I mean, this is actually where they got me, because after my experience doing Aurora, where I was hard time gated on a lot of stuff, especially the henge back piece, which I think was the bane of many's existence.
Yeah, mine too.
I went through and did stuff like the golem back piece, all of that stuff on release. But I wasn't expecting the weapon sets. Like, I also had 250 of each currency, which then went on to Sky Scale and just stuff like that. So I think certainly I will be more prepared for next time. But even then, I do feel that the content... when I say content, I mean kind of like being able to do stuff in the map and having fun, right? Like, I'm one where I do quite enjoy just running around a map and just doing some events, but I've never really felt I've been able to do that with the Living Story 4 maps and LS3 maps to a lesser extent. I can't just... It feels kind of empty. Like, the events themselves are like, feel like placeholder. The placeholder events? They kind of did an HOT when they revamped it, like, go defend this guy whilst he sets up a healing pod or whatever. All the events in Living Story maps feel like that. There's nothing exciting, no interesting tidbits, so to speak, and that's why I feel like it just lacks content.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you're right about that, actually. I mean, I look at certain stuff like Sandswept Isles. I think there's so much cool stuff going on there, like the Wyvern fights and stuff in the sky, but maybe I need to relook at what those maps are actually offering in terms of raw events.
Because I think that's kind of what the content ArenaNet is making is, but I don't know, it just feels... I think Sandswept was actually pretty decent. Like, they had these like all these mini boss events that you could kind of do solo in the Inquest area, and they all gave the difluoric crystals and stuff like that, which was obviously really nice when you were doing the stuff that needed them. But yeah, I don't know. I was kind of done after a week, and I was like, all right. And then my motivation started to drop for a lot of these Living Story maps.
You guys think we've discussed this topic enough? You want to move on, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to move on. All right.
Okay, so maybe we'll go on to more of a PvP-oriented topic. So I know Angeels is gods of PvP developer, so maybe he'll have... Because WP and I have discussed this a little bit already, so we'll see.
Okay.
I'll actually ask Angeels the question, is sort of to kind of remedy the situation of PvP matchmaking right now, because the issue is, right, the matchmaking is actually fine, but the system is being input in a way not enough players, right? So it can't really process enough players to get kind of like good matchmaking, right? So the assertion is like, should we change how matchmaking works based on because right now it's based on kind of like classes, right? Should we remove that, or should we enforce some other kind of thing for the matchmaker to kind of like remedy that? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, no, I do. That's actually a really tough one. I think the class checks are actually really important. Because it kind of, I do feel it makes more balanced matchups. Like certainly, especially nowadays, right? Like if you had Rev and whatnot on what Rev, Firebrand, Scourge, for instance, on one team, and then the other team just didn't have that at all, it would be quite like, obviously skill comes into it and it could 100% go the other way, but just from raw specs, the power of those specs by themselves, it would be a somewhat one-sided match. Okay, and the enemy team, the team against that, would have to play very skillfully, just like in terms of rotations, to avoid that. So I think the class check in the matchmaker is actually quite important. But as to there's anything they could change, I think that's actually a really difficult one. I'm not too sure. I'd have to have a think about that, actually.
Obviously, in low tiers, I feel like the class check is actually pretty useless because you'll generally, well, no, it's good. It's good in low tiers, right? Because it kind of gives you what you need to have in a balanced team comp, right? But in higher tiers, it's not as useful because you really want a good player on your team rather than something that fits the comp, right? Because usually good players can play an inferior comp but in a superior way, and if they do so, they deserve the win, right? So perhaps maybe they could do something where they change the value of how much the class is worth based on the average rating of the match. So like the higher the rating of the average player in each match, the less it values the class that they're playing in. It can kind of like class stack more the higher the rating gets, right? Because it's true, like you can have a comp of like 2 thieves and 2 support guardians, and you can kind of figure out, well, if we put the support guardian with 2 thieves, he can kind of like bait out players, and the 2 thieves can just kill anything and it doesn't matter, right? And then like the enemy team is like playing a perfectly balanced comp, and it can sort of work, if they play it well, right? But generally they won't play it well if they're in gold, right? The 2 thieves will be like, well, should I 1v1 or something? Like they won't know how to solve the problem, right? So perhaps, I don't know, what do you think about this, WoodenPotatoes, about the whole like allowing the class stacking to exist in higher tiers?
Well, I sort of feel like a lot of this, and what I see a lot of in the higher rated is obviously someone just queues on Necro, right, and then just swaps over to something else, right? Like that happens to such a degree to me. I kind of wonder whether any of it's worth it in the first place. Like, if people are just going to game the system, it's not going to work fundamentally, and not even that, not even people deliberately trying to game the system. People just tend to, swap around. Like they'll be like, oh, I don't want to play this build on this game, I'm going to swap over. Or maybe they were in PvE doing something irrelevant and now they've affected the matchmaking. I can't imagine that it speeds matchmaking times up, can it? It must be coming at a cost, surely, to how long it's taking matches to come to.
If you're playing a class that isn't very popular.
Yeah. So maybe the main thing to me is I just wonder how much benefit it really is when people, in a weird way, I sort of think it shouldn't be there so that people can, if you queue into a game and you've got 3 thieves, right, which is, in many respects going to be a death sentence for a lot of scenarios. If that's a regular occurrence, aren't you somewhat cultivating a culture amongst people to know to swap and to actively swap? I think the best solution to this, honestly, is to embrace the swapping side of the game. Don't tell people they're going to get dishonor if they try and swap in a pre-game lobby, for example, which is just going to throw all the noobs astray and stuff. Make people realize and sort of embrace the fact that, oh, look, we're looking at comps in the pre-game lobby here. We're seeing what we're up against and what we're comfortable playing. And now is the time to swap, and that's okay. And that's something we should be doing. And then the matchmaker can do whatever it wants. Go pure skill and you roll from there. I feel like it's not honestly a topic that's very high on my priority list. I don't think it's I don't think it's the evils of PvP or anything. But if I was going to change it, that's kind of my mindset on it. And I'm not sure if I should really be thinking of anything else beyond that, right? You know, should I?
Well, it's definitely an issue with the whole swapping thing, right? But I think we talked to Ben, was it last night? And I agreed with what he said. He said it creates more issues than it resolves, right? So that's kind of like the difficulty of kind of dealing with that, is because, you know, we can prevent, you know, people from kind of like gaming the system in a way, even though that's not the only issue. But you know, how much of the games are balanced because of that, and then like to fix it, you would like create another layer of complexity that would create other issues, and how much would you actually be fixing, right? So it's kind of difficult to kind of come up with a solution here.
Yeah, that's why I say embrace it and just, you know, make it very clear to everyone you can swap right now, and you are encouraged to. If you think you get a strategic advantage, oh look, you have no side noders, maybe you want to swap to a side noder. What an incredible idea that is. Like, if you encourage people to do that, you don't need the matchmaker to do anything, do you? Like, realistically. And I think I think PvP is more enjoyable if people know more than the one thing that they're playing. I think you're a better player if you know more than the one thing that you're playing. So sort of having like something you can swap to if you feel it's more worthwhile for your team, that should be the hallmark of a reasonable player, shouldn't it? And it should be something that's natural and comfortable for people to do. So yeah, I mean, you do get into these weird situations where if you embrace that culture, aren't you then going to be in a place where it's like people are waiting for the last second to then swap to what they want, and then both teams have like 3 swaps, and it's just a complete joke. Like nobody knows what the game's going to be at the end afterwards anyway. And you know, maybe that's not ideal, and that would be an inevitable consequence of what I'm talking about here. So maybe you can the whole thing. Maybe what do you guys think about the whole lock-in idea, right? Like,
I hate it. No,
you hate it. So talk to me about why. Why do you hate it?
At what point is the
Teach me.
lock-in? That's the real
yeah, like
Yeah, and who is forced to lock in first, right? Like, how do you solve those problems? Are there solutions?
I think it should be maybe like an auto lock after like 30 seconds or something like that, so you can kind of like create your own team comp like immediately. So like you load in, right, and then you've got 2 thieves, so you immediately say, okay, who's swapping off thief, and then you don't really have enough time to like counter the other comp in 30 seconds or in the remaining 30 seconds, but you have enough time before the 30 seconds to kind of play with your team, right? And
so
then
you're saying you can fix your own inefficiencies, kind of
right,
thing.
and then that last 30 seconds you're kind of like changing your build or whatever.
I want to kind of approach this from a different perspective. I think you guys are maybe putting too much value on an individual game. Okay, like, does that make sense? Like you know, a lot of players at the moment, they just go game after game after game after game after game. Okay, and like you win, you lose, you win, you lose, and you know, you try and have fun with it, right? And I think if you're like putting increased value per game, like you're going to see a lot more salt, you're going to see a lot more like stuff like just like this, and I think it's more beneficial for the game community as a whole to kind of just go, you know, you just spam games as opposed to, you know, trying to get the perfect game.
I don't know, I think the guy in chat is right. You sound like a hyper casual there, Angels. Me and WP are trying to create competitive PvP here, and you want a casual?
Yeah, that's true. I'm a casual PvE.
Someone really say that? What the hell?
Yeah, such a PvE answer.
No, I think that maybe that's a good point, actually. Your argument is one that it all averages out in the end anyway, and the better player is on average the better player.
I mean, realistically, okay, well, not just that, but like, you know, the biggest issue, right, is the fact that there's not enough good players at the high end, and there's not enough bad players at the low end. Okay, and it's kind of we got this squish of everyone into
perfect.
Of everyone into silver, gold, and platinum.
You are right, though. It would only affect like the top, I don't know, like 25 players maybe on each, and the top 25 aren't even playing that many games, right? They play for minimum games, so the actual number of games that this would affect is like maybe, I don't know, 1,000 games out of like maybe like 10,000. It's probably even wider margin. Like there's probably like 50,000 games played per season, right? And 1,000 of them maybe would be affected by that. Yeah, it's just rough numbers.
There is a weird phenomenon. This might be slightly off topic, but there is an interesting thing, and I wonder how the matchmaker feels about this. You do get this thing where this is definitely not to do with class-based matchmaking, but when you don't even have to be that high on the leaderboard, right? But you very quickly hit a point where it's like, okay, there's 15 people queuing around my rating right now, and for the next 3 hours, I'm pretty much going to say that see the same 15 roughly faces, right? Like, and whatever collection of builds those people are on, it can either lead to you getting like these ridiculous win sprees or these ridiculous loss sprees.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether the matchmaker needs to be able to account for that a little bit, because the problem really when it comes down to it is population, right? But I mean, I had that experience like literally yesterday where I genuinely played maybe like 13 or 14 games in a row where it was generally like the same 9 people, maybe the 10th would swap around, you know? And in some cases, it kind of feels a bit when you mix duos in there as well, which are like these bigger rocks that can't be shuffled around so much, to try and create fair matches for people. I don't know. It feels like it's very challenging from a number of aspects to be the matchmaker right now when you have a limited pool of players like this. And also, you got that side of it that the matchmaker fundamentally isn't your friend, right? The matchmaker wants you to be at 50-50. It just matters how high skill your opponents are when you finally hit that 50-50, right? But it's trying to make you hit 50-50 all the time. So it's trying to make you lose if you've just won. And that feels, I think that's something hard for me to wrestle with when I try and think about how to make matchmaking seem more fun, right? Because its objective is not necessarily the same as mine, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think also, sorry, ignore me actually. I've forgotten what I was going to say.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah. I understand what you kind of mean, because like I was queuing at one time and there was this Reaper queuing, and I was queuing a Scourge, and Scourge pretty hard counters Reaper, right? If you just fear them out of the stability, it's a pretty hard counter, right? So like if you're the only 2 Necros queuing, you'll pretty much always be on opposite teams, right? And so it sort of creates this inequality, right, based on like the class MMR, which can kind of
what you've touched on there is really important as well. I think someone said that in chat as well. Another thing with the class-based thing is a Dragon Hunter is not the same as a Firebrand, right? If you're going to do class-based matchmaking, can you at least do elite spec-based matchmaking at least? But even that doesn't fix the issue, right? Like, a glass, not that it's meta or anything, but a glass Tempest is not the same as a support Tempest, and yet the matchmaker will put them on opposite teams as though it's created some kind of valid mirror when it hasn't, you know? I really think it just has to be in the player's hands to swap and make the each game strategically the most fun game, right? I think the players should be encouraged to embrace swapping, because then it fixes all these problems, because otherwise, you're going to get core guards going against Firebrands. You're going to get core guard Reaper against Firebrand Scourge over and over and over again, right? And because there's only 10 people queuing, they're 2 separate duos. One of those duos is going to have a bad time. I'm just telling you now, unless people choose to start swapping, right? So I don't know. I think that's my answer to this whole thing. Probably.
So
I think also.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think also that the matchmaking is kind of is messed up anyway with duos even existing. And I'm not saying duos are bad, because I think they are better for the game as a whole, because it makes it a lot more enjoyable experience being able to queue with a friend. But, this matchmaking as a whole is just kind of messed up. It's all over the place. It can't really function as intended. And I don't think there's any of these changes are really going to push it in a better direction either, if that makes any sense.
So are you kind of in the same camp as me, where you just want all efforts to be about population?
Yeah, I think so. I think focusing on that would be the better approach. Maybe I think there are some maybe changes to the ranking system. Well, not the ranking system, but like the tiering system. So like Plat 1, Plat 3, etc. That would not necessarily help the matchmaker, but it could potentially push people to improve, because you have a lot of players
represent them.
Pardon?
More accurately represent
Yeah,
them.
maybe. I think if you split up Plat, it would help a lot, because I think you compare like Plat 1 player with a Plat 3 player, and there is a very big divide. And I think also doing that kind of pushes people to improve a bit. So I'm not sure. Maybe
So
that.
you
Sorry,
think
what
it's-
is your suggestion? What is it? What are you saying to do exactly?
Split up, say, Plat and Gold into
like change the
two
values
separate
that it requires to get that.
Yeah.
now.
So
Right.
like instead of Plat, maybe you have like Plat as like the lower tier, and then I don't know, like Diamond is the second tier. And you basically
Isn't that
split.
totally arbiary? Because
It is completely arbitrary. It is, and it doesn't affect matchmaking, but it would push people to improve because they want the higher thing.
Right. Okay. They don't want that already. You don't think that it's compelling enough to go from Plat 1?
No, Plat 1. You still get the Plat badge. Like
I see. Okay,
next
mate,
big step. The next big step is legendary, right? And you know that's something to push for, and it's something people do push for. But I think also there is an element of for a lot of players, legendary is too far to push, and maybe an intermediary goal is would be good. And I mean, they've done a lot of, like the guy said, carrot on the stick. They've done a lot of that with like skins and stuff, like the 100 rank. But actually having something for winning games and stuff like that, I think that's something they should have. That's something they should have.
No, I could get beyond that, actually. I think that's a good idea. I mean, I feel like it's quite volatile a lot of the time as well. You know, like I'll swing through all 3 Plat divisions quite regularly, and so if my badge was changing in the middle of it, maybe I'd want to cling a bit more, and I'd actually I'd be like, okay, no, I've done too many hours in a row here, and I've been playing like trash for the past 5. Let's stop, kind of thing. You know, maybe be a bit more encouraged for that.
I mean, I know, for instance, like for me personally, when I'm like kind of hovering at the lower end of Plat 3, like I'm like, okay, whatever, you know, I just spam games. If I drop to Plat 2, it's whatever, okay? But like as soon as I get closer and closer to like Legendary, and whilst I say I don't really care about it, and I think outside of the game I wouldn't, but like when I'm playing, I do kind of care about it, and I do want to cling on to it. So I could see that.
So if you had another one of those in the middle,
yeah, I think it would, maybe that would affect some other players as well. I don't know. That's just purely my perspective on things, right?
Do you really think it's true that people don't care about winning? I think definitely down in golds, people and
no, dude, in gold people care so much about winning.
Yeah,
they
they
want to win. They're just trash at the game.
But what is their motivation for winning? Is it just becoming platinum?
I don't know. I honestly I couldn't tell you. But the amount of rage and salt in like gold and whatnot is like significantly higher than any high level, like any plat game.
Yeah, the salt in high level queues is like personal, like it's like specific personal insults to people. In gold, it's just like pure unadulterated rage.
I've been doing some queues on my ult with a friend, and Christ, it's like, oof. My ult's block list has massively grown.
Really?
Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that people do care about winning. Personally, I think they do. Even at the high end, I think people still do. Generally speaking, I mean, certainly there's a selection that don't, but I think in general, people are in there and they're trying to. Just a lot of people can fundamentally misunderstand how to win, right? The whole all caps stand on node stuff in gold, right? You can literally see people just don't actually understand how to play the game, but they still want to win.
Stay mid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, even just the idea of queuing a support to get lots of wins is like dodgy as fuck, to be honest.
Yeah.
But sorry. So yeah, I don't know. I think I think that a lot of it is, but that's not really on the game to tutorialize, is it? I find League really interesting, right? Like League is a game. I haven't played League for a long time, right? But League has a lot of very specific ways to win and like clear strategies. As like, you know, solo top, and you've got your jungle, and you've got your AP carry in mid, and when I last played anyway, and you have your AD. Like that is all. That's not the devs didn't sit down and do a little tutorial saying you must do this, 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 and this. That is the game. The community, people realized this is a really efficient way to play, and it kind of evolved into that. And every match, players of that game feel like, even when you're not very good at it, they settle into that rhythm, and these fundamental pieces of knowledge about how to play are there. Guild Wars doesn't seem to have that. I don't. Do you get what I mean? There's a huge amount of Guild Wars that they just don't get it.
I think there is, but to a much lesser extent. Stuff like team fight mid, okay, like stuff like that. It's similar to a much like it's a more basic concept, right? But people still do it. They still understand that supports and team fighters should go mid, and classes that duel should go side nodes. And I think also in higher level ranked at the moment on EU, at least from my perspective, people are really starting to just stick with the 2-node strategy. Like, don't go far at all, just leave it alone. Like, there's no need for it. Or not necessarily far, but like close if they have far.
Yeah, there's like this indication that they kind of understand like how to behave, but not really why to do it. Like they say, don't go far, because they only need 2 to win, but they don't understand that going far sometimes is actually good. And you can actually see this in League of Legends too. I'm not sure if you were trying to say that it isn't, but like people stay in lane phase too long, or like they don't understand like when someone leaves their lane that it means that you're outnumbered, your team is outnumbered on the map or something like that. So I think it is pretty good, Guild Wars 2, as like kind of when you're rising up in ranks, you do see this difference in player skill based on the game mode's mechanics.
But people definitely get better. I just feel like the quality is so low for so much of the bell curve. Like the fundamentals, like it's okay to get off the node, mate. It's okay to kite, all right? Just don't die. The simple premise that it's a PvP game, like you'll literally see someone say, "Don't focus on players, focus on nodes. Don't try and kill anyone. Don't fight on. Just make sure you're at the node." Like these are just like crazy things that will just cause you in the long run to lose a ton of games. You have to, if there's a kill waiting for you on the road, take the kill. Pressure. No one has like an aggressive enough mindset, and I think it's because no one knows what they know the fundamentals of the game type. They know it's a territory-based game type, and they desperately want to win, but that to them means tunnel vision on the point, like suicide on the point, charge, ignore all reses for your allies. Don't look at them. If you like, they might look at the mini map and see that an ally is dying right near them on respawn, but they'll just walk off, like, because it's much more important to get to point A than to do anything else. And that is such a huge thing with this game, and it's a really basic thing to sort of learn very quickly to not do anymore. But the vast majority of players never seem to get beyond it. And again, I don't actually think it's that they don't want to win. I think they do want to win. That's why they're screaming in all caps to run to the node and stuff. But it never clicks. So I don't know. Maybe League of Legends is as bad, but there's a lot of little positioning things and stuff that people just actually seem to go out of their way to learn in that game. In this game, it feels like people are hopeless, like really hopeless.
I think there is another element to it though, that Guilds 2 PvP, it's a part of the game. It's not the main focus though. League, obviously, the main focus is League, actually participating, right? And I think there's certainly some stuff that Arena could do, like very basic stuff, like they could work with some community members, to get like some very basic, just like top tips or whatever. And they could do like a video or just like a post on the website and then just link to it in game. If they did that with just some like basic myths that have been like busted, so to speak, I think you'd see a drastic change in the approach.
That's actually a really good idea for a video.
Yeah, like just basic PvP myths busted.
It's a shame Jaws doesn't cover Guild Wars 2 anymore.
See, I think people always go, "Oh, there should be a tutorial on game. There should be a tutorial, blah 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 blah." But what if there was going to be? If they were going to tutorialize anything, I would have one simple scenario that players are required to play before they PvP. One simple scenario, like a PvE scenario for people. And the scenario is this: that you are tasked with capturing an objective, and you have like an invulnerable, crazy high damage enemy AI that's going to kill you. However, you also have an ally that's crazy and vulnerable and will kill this thing that threatens you. But the ally is in downstate off point on the territory, and all the tutorial teaches you is to go res the guy so that you don't get 2v1'd, and you can claim the node. Just that's such a fundamental, basic little thing. Get off the node.
We'd see a post on the forums in no time. This is too difficult. He's one-shotting me.
Yeah, and then no, but they would, and then you would say, no, where's your ally? Oh my god, and now you're not 2v1.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah, you got neutralized, but you won the fight, and look at that, beautiful sunshine.
You've got to put another fail objective
there is a lacking of a
There's a beast in the background.
And that's it. That's all people need. I think that one little click, and they're like, "Whoa, the world is not as complicated as I thought it was." And then so much would be fixed because you would just teach people at the gate it's okay to stop tunnel vision in the node. Do you know what I mean? And you could do that with PVE, little, a little rigged little tutorial thing. I think that would do so much for the game.
I always bring this up, but the Guild Wars 1 factions tutorial where you're in the academy and you go in and kind of learn your skills one by one. So you go into the kiting tutorial and it gives you caltrops if you're an assassin, or it gives you hamstring if you're a warrior, and the goal is to survive as long as possible. I always loved how that was designed because it's immersive, right? And it's also just kind of gives you the basics that you could easily do that in Guild Wars 2, but I don't know if they have the resources to do that.
Well, that's the thing. It's all about the resources, right? It's always about the resources. There's one thing I think is going on with League versus Guild Wars as well. And I think that this is something most veteran players of Guild Wars have absolutely no memory or perspective for or understanding for. I think completely out of touch. That's that Guild Wars 2, with 15 to 20 to 25 skills on every build, 18 passives to look at, your rune, all that stuff, right? I think that Guild Wars is actually, when you're starting out, you spend so much brain power just thinking about your build and the capabilities of your build and what skills to use and when to use them. And then you spend so long thinking about what your opponent is doing and watching what to dodge and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much anything game type specific is very hard for a new player to also think about on top. And they get shouted at and chewed out by people. Oh, you're just stupid. Oh, you got no IQ. You're an idiot. Blah, blah, blah. But I actually think that Guild Wars 2 is extremely steep because the actual moment-to-moment stuff it demands of you, before it becomes rote and natural and you know all your skills and you don't have to look at them and all that kind of stuff, the moment-to-moment stuff it asks of you is extremely high. League, what is it? It's 4 skills, right? Basically, pretty much, right?
Also,
it's just much quicker.
It's the current meta as well, which is just absurd for new players. It's so quick. A Rev 1 runs up to them and one-shots them, and they're like, "What happened there? How did I die?" How would they possibly know what to dodge the myriad of skills that Rev has, or that they shouldn't even engage this class in the first place? Yeah. I think there's certainly a lot of. I think this was also a topic of ours. Balance changes they need to do at the lower ends to make it a lot more friendly. Just not for necessarily new players, because I don't think there's many new players coming in, but for the player base in general that isn't in that Plat 2, Plat 3 situation, to kind of tone things down, reduce the damage a lot. Stuff like Sick'em Soul Beast, you can dodge it, admittedly, but at the same time, the average player is not. They're not going to know that.
It's not just about dodging Sick'em Soul Beast.
It's just all about being one-shotted, right?
Yeah.
The fact that even if you can counterplay it, the fact that not counterplaying it is so punishing, right? So in gold, it's just too effective because you have to.
Sick'em Soul Beast is just. It's a matter of. You have to be very, if you're on a map like Legacy, right? You have to be very aggressively thinking about where they are and making sure you're not in an open field at any point. And that's hard on some maps. It's hard to do on some maps. So it's not just, I've been Sick'em, just do some dodge rolls. It's really, there is a lot more to it than that, especially if the Sick'em Soul Beast is competent. And I think that is one of the oppressive sort of. People tend to think, by the way, that we're in a binary scenario where there's AT builds and then there's bad builds, but that's not necessarily true at all, right? And that always comes up. You propose nerfing Sick'em Soul Beast, and some ranger apologists will say they don't run it in ATs very much. We don't see it winning monthly tournaments.
Right. But, well, that kind of brings up the next topic, right? Is should balance be split between the two, or rather, at what level is balance the most important, right? Because you have the gold Necro, who's extremely powerful, but then they, you know, as soon as they reach platinum, they're not as effective because the enemy team learns how to focus targets, and a Necro is an easy target, right? So Necro becomes less effective then. So do we nerf Necro because it's too strong in gold? Or sorry, nerf it because it's too strong in gold, or not nerf it because then it'll be irrelevant in plat. So it's like...
Necro is a beautiful example. Actually, I think Necro is the best example of all specs and builds in the game at the moment. Scourge particularly at the moment, but Necro in general is just this really cool design thing because it's easy to pressure right now. Where it can carry so hard, and then as soon as people learn to target you, it's a whole other world. You actually have to be really good at the game. And again,
it isn't even Scourge that's the broken part in like gold or whatever. It's Reaper. Like Reaper just destroys everyone because like the running around with purple quickness, ridiculous damage, and
they all cluster on node.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually the scariest thing for me when I know like I'm in a low rated match, because I like know my teammates aren't going to be able to handle the Reaper, and they're just going to delete my team, right?
Yeah. It's not Soul Beast that's the real issue. It's actually Reaper, which is something I didn't expect. But yeah.
Well, I think they all are to a different extent. But to the question, should they... I don't think it's feasible at all to split balance any further than they currently do. Like, it's a...
I mean, they barely do it in the first place. You know, and we have... It's interesting, actually, because do you guys remember when they split the Scrapper Boa gyro? They actually somehow made both effects apply at the same time in PvP. So you got like...
you mentioning that.
Yeah, but so basically when they split it, they nerfed it by 33% in PvP or whatever, the barrier. And somehow both effects actually applied, and in PvP it was 1.6 times as a result.
So it was buffed.
Yeah, it was buffed by 1.6 times, which was quite funny, to be fair. It was very easy to do. But I think actually skill splitting is pretty tough for them, from what I can see, because it's almost like they have to manually go through and add checks for these skills, because as soon as that check wasn't there on Bulwark Gyro, both effects applied. So I don't know, that seems... I think honestly skill splitting is pretty tough for them as a consequence, and I certainly don't see them adding more.
Absolutely.
In that
but
sense.
Then which do they balance for? Do they balance for ATs, which take up way less of a portion of the actual games played, or do they balance for ranked, which is usually what people play, but it's not as important that it's as balanced, right?
That's a difficult one, because I think right now balancing for both is a good thing, and I don't think it negatively affects either way. Like with the exception of maybe Ranger, it would cause issues. Okay, I think if you nerf Rev a bit, then it's good. For everyone. If you nerf Hollow Quickness, I think that's good for everyone. If you nerfed, I don't know, Deadeye a bit, I think that'd be good for everyone. But
wait, you think Deadeye needs nerfs?
Yeah, I think in the lower end it definitely needs nerfs.
Like, what would you nerf about it?
Probably the stealth on dodge.
Stealth on dodge again?
What?
Yeah. I don't think that should ever have been added. I
agree it should have never been added, but I think the issue
so
with
bad
Deadeye
like a balance standpoint
is that it can just spam Death's Judgment, right? So I guess that has basically what you kind of said. Like you can just spam Death's Judgment by dodging. You shouldn't be able to like. It should be more like, oh, I go for this big Death's Judgment, right? And you should be like kind of like kiting, baiting out cooldowns the whole time. Whereas you're doing that, but you're just spamming Death's Judgment to do it, right?
Yeah. I think also the mob spam when you're kind of kneeling and on the 2 skill is complete cancer.
You have to change how initiative works, or I guess just remove the mob.
Yeah. But I mean,
sorry.
Let's go.
All right. Well, my answer to this is balance for ATs. Everything should be balanced for ATs, and everything else should be focused about getting population, so that ATs become a more interesting, more prevalent part of the game. And also, if you get your population high enough, you can make the ranked experience a 5-man experience again, right? And no one would question that. You'd have like the idea of the solo queue duo or whatever, and you'd know that balance would be a bit off and everything's a little bit weird, but that would not be viewed as the priority method of playing the game. the priority method of playing the game is it's a 5-man game type, and we're getting lost and we're losing our way on that with Guild Wars, and we're building expectations for other stuff at this point. But none of that's right. It's a 5v5 game, and the population can't sustain it at the moment. But that doesn't mean you go chasing something else. Still chase the prize. Focus purely on population. None of this like halfway stuff.
Do you not feel that population is limited by the fact that people can just go into PvP and be one shot by a soul beast or like a reaper or literally anything?
Well, I guess it's
when I
kind of my
say
fault,
fixing when I say improving population, that's an umbrella of suggestions. Some of them systematic changes for PvP. Some of them use interface oriented. Some of them incentive oriented. Some of them balance. Yeah, balance. You want the game to be the best game that it can be. And if balance is inhibiting to people's prospects getting it, then balance is something you look at. But population, everything.
I guess this sort of like dichotomy though isn't necessary to like. I kind of brought it up, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like you can balance for both at the same time. It is indeed the same game mode. It's just how many players you can take in, right? So that really is kind of, as you said, the population issue. But at the same time, there are some things like, I don't know if we want to like go over kind of like what more specific balance changes we want to go over, but the nerfing of some things can be, maybe the class isn't viable in this game mode and nerfing it would be fine, but if we nerf other things, wouldn't that kind of like be a buff to it even though we're nerfing it? So it's kind of like you can do both at the same time, right?
Yeah, I suppose. The other thing on the skill split idea, by the way, is just, I mean, you cannot justify splitting. How big, how many, across both regions, how many players engage with ATs, like realistically? How many? Not many. Like we're literally talking about you can't justify the expenditure and the time and development efforts into catering to this.
If you're going to argue this, then you kind of are saying, well, why should we balance for ATs too, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I feel ranked is kind of, whilst ATs are significantly more fun, and they're a better experience overall, ranked has kind of become the key part of PvP, and ATs are kind of on the peripheral.
But yeah, I accept that, and I think the pragmatists out there would definitely say what you guys are here. I think that's perfectly reasonable. However, I think the idealists, I think that you keep your eye on the prize. I think the game should be all about, and I think the answer is not the balance. I think the answer is AT incentive. And look, one of the reasons I don't do more ATs is because ATs are so boring at the moment. You guys do like a daily AT? You're just sitting around in HOTM for like hours. It feels like, right? Oh, you got to buy. We sit around doing nothing again for another 20. I want to play the game, man. Let me play, and then you get like one good game, right? In the tourney, that's it.
There's nothing you can really do about that either. Because...
Would Swiss get rid of buys though?
Swiss, I think, is actually going to make daily ATs worse.
Teach me why, because this is like.
So you are going to be playing for like an AT at the moment takes about an hour. Okay, Swiss is going to have maybe double the games. So it might be up to 2 hours where you're going to have to invest time. There are going to be no increased rewards at release. Okay. There is not best of 3 for finals. Okay. And you're going to be fighting similar sort of teams. Like if the teams are bad in Swiss, in the Swiss tournaments, okay, then you're still going to be fighting bad teams. You're going to fight them maybe once or twice. And then
let me ask though. Am I getting, between every round, am I getting booted back to HOTM and then going through a whole other 5-minute accepts and blah, 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 blah? Or are we in the... Really?
Yes.
You would think they would do it?
That remains. I mean, that kind of has to, because then there's a map kick-out time at the end of a match, which they have to wait for before people can be put into the next game. So, like, I think there's 3 minutes or something like that they have to minimum wait for. You still have the 5-minute queue accept because there's long wait times, of course. And, wait times aren't really going anywhere. You're going to just be, and you're still going to have bad games, and there are probably going to be more of them that you're going to be playing for no increased rewards. So,
have you talked about this a lot before? Like, what? I've never heard anyone be anything but positive about Swiss, and I've never really known what to think.
Swiss for monthlies is going to be fantastic. Swiss for dailies, not so great.
Well, the one thing that Swiss is really good for is for like new teams, because it gives them a chance to get practice, right? Because they don't just get eliminated. They lose, they get another chance, right? Because everyone plays the same amount of games, I believe, right?
I mean, I'm 100% talking about from my perspective, where like if I play an AT, I'm like quarters, semis, finals, like kind of consistently, right? Like, but for a gold player or whatever, and they've just found 4 other friends and they're playing a daily AT, it's gonna be fantastic. They're gonna play so many games. Yeah, they might get their ass handed to them a couple of times more than they would in a daily AT right now, but they're going to have more opportunities to play and participate, and it'll actually cut down, I think, on some of the farming. I do worry, though, that the population will drop because it's no longer going to be an easy 5 gold or whatever for just AFK in the first game. And I mean, those people aren't really participating anyway, but yeah, I think that could cause some issues down the line.
Weird, because it just comes back to the population issue every single time. So I just feel like the marketing team needs to just like encompass the PvP team right now.
No, it's not. Do it within the game. Stop hiding PvP from the game. Stop hiding the fact that Heart of the Mist exists from your PvP. Why in a Living World episode do we never go to Heart of the Mists? Or do we ever look at that? Or do we have an NPC that remotely looks at it? Why is there no achievement that ever nods back to it? When there's a new Living World episode, why aren't there like more incentives to just go do a little bit of PvP here and there?
Yeah.
Right? Why are gizmos hidden in the user interface? Why is nothing ever like Guild Wars 2 opened the gate and said, look, we're going to separate PvP from the rest of the game so it's competitive. You don't have to grind and work on anything. You can create an account and you're good at the game instantly. That was a beautiful thing, a treasure to behold, the same as Guild Wars 1's version of it. And then somewhere over the years that has ended up being, all right, let's ignore that part of the game. It's its own little universe separate from everything else, and never will we ever remind someone that it exists. That's the problem. There's so many players in Guild Wars 2 that would actually love PvP and realize it is the best thing you can play in the game. It is the most divergent. It's excellent, but they will never ever go into it because they've got their little opinion that, oh, I don't like it, and they haven't challenged that opinion for 6 years. Why haven't they challenged that opinion for 6 years? Because they haven't played in 6 years, because ArenaNet don't seem to want you to know that PvP is in the game, and that alone would do so much for population.
Yeah.
It would be so simple to every Living World release have a new achievement that says participate in an AT. I don't care what the flavor or justification is for unifying the 2 branches of the game like that, but this should happen. And so it should happen with World versus World as well, and any other area of content that is currently malnourished. They should just link this stuff together. You've got all these players here. You're very happy to remind them of the gem store and put that kind of stuff in there. And you know that works. When you have a population spike, you can move people to that area of your software, move that people to other areas too. It's not hard. And you don't need to build this like massive infrastructure and like crazy justification for why you're talking about Heart of the Mist. There should just be like a rotating set of stuff people can do each episode. Instead, it's the reverse. Instead, what happens is the PvP players get a new reward track that says, oh, get all the rewards with the reward track. Don't worry. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go to PvE and interact with those other people and explain yourself why they're fun. You just get to have your own little clique where you just, do your own little thing in that little area of the game, and you never do. So they actually compound the problem by having them just segregated off. And they must know this. They must know how.
I think they do. I think they're doing. They've said they're working on this PvP festival idea, right? Like, I don't know what that encompasses. I just know that, like, obviously Ben's in the PvP team, and a lot of the stuff that he's kind of had his hands on has been good for PvP in general. So I don't know, like, that could be good for the game if they just rotate once a year through, like they do with Dragon's Bash or whatever. And they say, here's a PvP festival. Like, we got lots of 2v2 tournaments, like Tournament of Legends going on. Everyone come and participate, like, have a bit of fun, whatever. That could be good. But you're right, there needs to be a more consistent effort from ArenaNet. Like, new season start. We have this little thing on the right, like World v World core swap and stuff like that. First week of the season, put PvP season, whatever it is, like 18 there. Okay.
Ask yourself this. They've done a brand new thing for World weekly events. Excellent for the game. Brilliant. It's been so good. Now let's look at what they did. World bosses. 3 times so far. They've had ones on world bosses. The lowest tier, most boring, ridiculous content that's in the game. and yet they've done world bosses 3 times. Now they've finally moved to world versus world. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if we go back to world bosses for the next one. If there's not, it's so good. And if that doesn't say everything about, like, it feels like an intentional kind of, we don't want you to remember that PvP exists in Guild Wars 2 anymore, right? Like, it feels intentional. It feels spiteful. It doesn't. I'm being hyperbolic here, but it feels so empty of just any effort on any level, you know, to really push for this that area of the game. And it baffles me. That population so easily.
How effective do you think the War Claw was in getting players to World of World? Obviously, it's different than a festival because it's like this permanent thing that you basically have to play World of World now. And I'm not saying bring PvP mounts because that would just be terrible. But
Llama mount one.
Actually, holy shit, dude. That's such a good idea.
You see, now it's in your head. Like, you're thinking, I want a llama mount.
But, like,
it is world bosses. People are saying in chat the next one is world bosses.
It is world bosses, yeah.
Are you serious? Oh, do you know what?
Did you not see the post?
No, I haven't seen the post. No, I haven't seen the post.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, all right. Anyway, the point has been made, and you guys can sit with that. So, just, you know, these are the things.
But yeah, if they did have
for
some kind of like
Warclaw, I don't know. For the acquisition period of Warclaw, it definitely brought people in, right? And that's something, right?
I mean,
can you imagine?
We can probably check how many people did the achievement, right?
Like,
efficiency at least.
I just want you guys to imagine this, okay? Something that encouraged people, like one of these weekly things, to go to PvP, that was somehow tied to the next mat, right? The next monthly, like, just in any way. I just want you to imagine a monthly tournament where they did that, and you actually had like 70, 80 teams joining up for it, which you could easily get if you brought the PvE hordes over from some basic. Just imagine that. That would literally go down as the greatest mat that they've ever done. Obviously, people on the top end would be like, oh, it's all just noobs. It doesn't actually mean anything. We just farmed our way to the top. But for the game in general, it would be so incredible. And think about how many of those people might end up lingering, right? Yeah. And it's just such a simple thing to do. It's just...
But I think they struggle to find a balance between getting players who feel like they don't, it's not worth it for them because they'll just lose. So they need like this incentive to get in there, right? But they also need to kind of not create this thing where it's like, oh, just lose your way. So they're not really trying to get better, you know, because that's kind of how ranked is. Like, you just get gold even if you lose. And that's
you
why
get
you
significantly
have
less for the losses. To be fair, the pips are very different.
You get
wins
more
versus
for winning, but
yeah, no, you're right. That is something to think about. You know, but that's minutia. That's you know that's
yeah, they definitely need to get people in before they need to get them motivated, right? That's definitely more important.
They just need to challenge people. There's too many people who just think, this is not for me. This is not my thing. I don't do this. And they're wrong to think that way. They're closed-minded to think that way. There's a lot more that they could get out of it than they could possibly fathom, and they just don't. So if they're not going to challenge themselves, as adults so irregularly do, the devs need to challenge them. It's better for them and the game in the long run. Hold on. Maybe I'm a bit, I don't know. My philosophies tend to be a little bit sort of aggressive. I don't know. I think that they should be aggressive about it. I think they should. Not completely indifferent, at least, you know.
It's interesting you guys mentioned the Warclaw. Okay, so I just looked this up on efficiency. Okay, and only 23% of 150,000 accounts have the Warclaw. Okay, on efficiency.
You think that's low, do you?
I think that's low considering the fact that efficiency tends to be filled with players who are more active in the game and would be therefore likely to check their stats.
It's not like something where it's like optional. It's kind of mandatory to use the Warclaw in World v World, right? So
yeah.
First of all, there's no more than 20% world. There's probably a little more than 20% of those are worldly worlders, right? But definitely.
My interpretation for that actually would be that about 20% of the population probably plays World versus World, which therefore would be an expression of the fact that World versus World's population didn't actually benefit at all from the Warclaw thing, which would be a strong argument against everything I've just said there. But at least we all saw that there was a big spike of activity, at least when the Warclaw came out. right? And that spike naturally went away because it was very much oriented around this one thing at the end. But I think any intelligently designed weekly bonus event or PvP incentive that came around, such as a PvP festival, which I think would be an extremely powerful thing, anything intelligently made would be something that instills a passion in people to keep going, right? So it's not a spike because this is the most infinitely replayable and exciting part of the game by far. The content itself is immaculate. It's just birthing that in people. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is just all my subjective feelings on it, muddying the waters. But it doesn't surprise me people zerged away from World versus World after they got the Warclaw. Why wouldn't they, right? Like,
Actually, I don't know if the Warclaw stats even low because only 13% rather of people have Skyscale completed. So yeah. But then again,
well, that's a little different, I think.
Yeah, of course. But like, I mean, I don't know. It's
maybe give it a little bit more time before you check out that stat. I don't know, because like it is pretty difficult to get.
They were kind of close together, I feel, but yeah, the Skyscale does require more time and effort.
Yeah,
and it's not like
anyway.
Skyscale.
Well, the Skyscale's pretty epic. I don't know. It feels kind of prestigey though, right? Like, like this. So, yeah. What were some of your other PvP topics, Vallun? I'm gonna have to go in about 10 to 15, by the way.
Basically, just the last thing I want to talk about is if you guys had any like specific like balance changes you wanted to debate, because I know we talked about a little bit of the difference like between our balance issues, but I don't know if Angeels has any. If he wants to be an NG apologist.
Yeah,
no,
I'd love to hear what you think, Angeels.
I honestly, with NG, I think the biggest issue and the only real issue is quickness uptime. I think reduce the quickness uptime significantly, and Hollow's fairly fair. Because at that point, you can see the animations, you can dodge that stuff, you can counterplay it. A lot of the stab uptime and whatever comes from hitting Corona, and hitting Corona without quickness is a lot harder and it's easier to dodge and that kind of stuff. So I think without quickness, Hollow becomes a lot fairer to deal with. Rampage aside, because obviously Rampage needs to be gutted.
Well, can I throw a rebuke? All right.
Sure.
If fairness is on your priority list, how do you feel about the fairness of Elixir S Prime Light Beam or Elixir S Elixir X? Do you not feel like those are the least fair elements? Like, to me,
Elixir S.
Toss Elixir S, Prime Light Beam, or toss Elixir S into a Rampage. I'm talking about stealth bursting people.
Oh, okay,
the stealth
right. So I
think that the duration on the stealth is the main thing I would like to see changed.
I don't really feel people do that. Like toss Elixir S into the Rampage or whatever. Like, you don't really have an opportunity to, because there's so much reveal nowadays. Like, Spellbreaker has reveal on tether, Hollow has reveal on lock-on, like just from hitting someone in stealth. Soul Beast has Sick'em, just stuff like that. Like, I think Toss Elixir S is not that much of an issue, and honestly, the Hollow in the current meta should be saving it for disengaging or to stealth an ally. You get a lot more value out of that than like using it to get a big burst with Prime Light.
So you agree it's not necessarily fair, but it's not value enough that it's really high on your priority list?
I don't think it's unfair either. Like, I think there are certainly ways you can easily counterplay it by walking away. Like, you're not just going to sit on a node when you see an NG suddenly stealth when he's high health, or like he's winning a fight or whatever.
I agree with that. Like the counterplay to like Rampage or Prime Light, maybe not Prime Light Beam from stealth, but like getting engaged on from stealth is not really my issue with it. It's like their ability to disengage with that 6 seconds of stealth, because it's so long that they could just go anywhere, because Hollows also have really high mobility. But honestly, that's not even one of my biggest issues. Like, they can have that, to be honest. As long as like they just don't have overcharge shot to like be basically no cast time.
That's actually another point. Overcharge shot should definitely have the longbow 4 and Ranger kind of wind up kind of and then probably have the self knockback removed as well. But yeah, I think that'd be. I think other than that, Hollow in general is kind of fair, at least in my opinion. I know that's somewhat biased, but quickness and overcharge shot, kind of longer cast time. It's yeah.
So you would actually change overcharge shot to be a much more like generic skill, basically, right? Like the really prominent facet of it, you'd get away, but you'd have more fairness on the interrupt counterplay and the dodge counterplay and whatever.
Exactly.
Okay. What are your thoughts on some of the other classes?
What about Necro?
Necro. Oh, corrupt boon. Probably not unblockable, or reduced range. So you actually have to be
just reduced spam ability. Like it's a 12-second cooldown with two charges.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about blood? Because that's the main thing. That
blood res is stupid and should definitely be nerfed. Like, it's just way too quick. Res potential, like Tempest as well, is actually.
I don't think you should be able to res people by yourself. I think you should, if your team is there, then you should be able to like have a lot of res utility. But the whole like transfusion stuff just seems too strong for like to be also, moving the body at the same time as like resing them.
I think if I agreed, and I'm not sure how much I do agree, but if I agreed, I mean, I pretty much do. What I would like to see, I'd like to see the body moving stay, because I think that's really an interesting dynamic, and that's quite. But a lot of the other stuff, like all the miners synergistically, basically, essentially, like one of the miners essentially is passively constantly rezzing people because it's stopping them bleeding, right? So in a way, it's kind of.
Well, that's not so much of an issue, right? Like, I don't think that. Yeah.
I would have most of that culled away in exchange for the utility of being able to move the body, right? Because I think that's the really interesting. That's like the visual and kind of there's interesting positioning that comes out of that, and you can kind of tell if you're killing someone, a blood scourge is rotating in, and you see that he's hiding up the ledge or whatever. You kind of know he's going to transfuse and pull the body over there, and you can preempt that, right? So I think that's actually a really fun element. It's a fun element to experience as the Necro, and it's a fun element if you're seeing it coming and thinking aggressively to play against. But the speed is maybe, and I think maybe Arena does that too, because they did nerf Well of Blood, didn't they? The on-res Well of Blood, didn't they? They dropped it from like 9% to 3%.
It's not enough.
You don't take that trade anymore though, so
yeah. But also Tempest, like obviously Tempest is not played much, but like
before we move on to Tempest, I think there's one change that really needs to be done to Scourge, and that's to make the shade skills have an ICD, sort of like the Mesmer shatters do. I don't know if you remember back in the day, but Mesmers used to like one-shot people by pressing all their shatters at the same time, and they had to actually like put an ICD on it, and that's kind of like how Scourges play now, is they just kind of like throw all of their shades into their shade skills into one shade animation, right? And it kind of like hides them all together, and you can't really see it.
Do you not think that's such an aggressive move though? One dodge invalidates it all. Does that not balance itself?
It could if it wasn't so spammy to play Scourge. I mean, they have pretty much permanent what is it called? Life force, right? Because of that one trait. That trait could probably use some nerfing too, like, because it just makes shroud generation completely irrelevant, because you actually do just press all of your shade skills one after another. So maybe like putting those two in tandem would be good, because you'd not only be able to not spam them all, so you'd have more it'd be easier to generate or to conserve your shroud, but you'd also not be able to spam because there'd be an ICD.
So you're talking about Nourishing Rot, right?
Nourishing
the first adept, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like your ICD change might make Scourges a little bit better, because I feel like a lot of Scourges like are bad.
Oh, that's fine.
Open up, they'll shade on you and use all the things instantly.
And to be honest, would it be better or worse for like gold Scourges? I think it'd be worse, right? Because they don't know what they're doing anyways, and it'd be okay for platinum Scourges because they're kind of like using their cooldowns, sort of.
I honestly don't know enough. Like, I haven't played Necro enough to really be able to comment on this, so I wouldn't. Like, I just think
Basically, the way that it allows you to play, it makes like Scourge into a burst Condi class, right? Because you can press all of the shade skills at the same time, rather than a like sustained damage class.
Hold on though, does Doomfire have an ICD on it? How effective is that? Is it really important? This thing you're talking about here?
I think it does have an ICD on it of like 3 seconds, but it's still good enough.
So you lose a ton of Doomfire value. Wait, does it? I don't know.
I think you have plenty. Well, you don't press all of them at the same time, but like you press maybe like half of them, and then you do another half.
Yeah, we are talking about curses right now, right? Like, not necessarily.
I think it works on curses mostly, right? It would be a curses nerf because you don't really get enough burst from just being blood, but
yeah. I do want to say on the video I did about proposed balance changes, I didn't really propose any changes to Necro at all because I do feel like quite a lot of what it does is fair. I do feel like it's pretty easy. Like it's pretty much any Necro spec is a good.
I would just say like Corrupt Boon, like that's honestly my only real issue, and Blood Res, like
that's a very hollow thing to say, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am very biased in that because there is nothing more annoying than just like you've seen the Necro, you've run past.
It does feel overly punishing, right, for no reason.
Yeah, it's just like, and there's like very little animation and shit. Like you're just. For goodness,
you're in your photon wall, and
just leave me alone.
It's one of those things where there's counterplay to it, but to counterplay it is just not really fun or like too interactive, right?
I don't know. I like honestly going back on what I said. Like I think the best way for me, Corrupt Boon, reduce the range a bit. Okay, like you have to be reasonably close range. Fair enough. You can't just spam it from a distance. Because I think Corrupt from a distance, it's not fun. That's not fun. Yeah. What other classes?
Warrior.
Well, I have a laundry list of Mirage things that I'd like to change. Mostly just things that, like one of the main things that I really don't like is like any pistol spec, the pistol bounce, right? Like I think a lot of bouncing skills in general in the game, you don't want prominent effects on, let alone friggin' CCs, right? Like I really hate the whole, also he's just pistol 5'd and he's interrupted something important on a target he didn't even consider, right? Like, so there's just lots of little things on that class that are just too AoE, too oppressive in terms of bouncing and moving around.
Well, what's kind of interesting is that there's so many builds that Mesmers can play that if you nerf whatever that is or whatever this is, like they're just gonna play the other one, right? So I feel like
no, but there is but you keep going though. That's a bit defeatist to think that way though, because then you just take the next thing, right? Yeah, if CI is the current flavor of the month, then you hit CI, and then
but there's going to be a point where Mantra Mesmer is the only viable build, and that's going to be the meta that I quit the game on. Well. So
you keep hitting them. I have quite a controversial and ridiculous opinion about Mesmer, but I really think it should be fundamentally a bit crap. But Portal should be in the game. That's what I think. I think it should be really rewarding if you're making good Portal plays in 5v5s and like have an efficient gameplay like that. But otherwise, I don't want to see billions of Mesmers in every queue. They're not fun to spectate. They're not fun to
Portal
fight.
coming back in this meta, to be fair.
But that's another issue though, because like people want to be able to play Mesmer, but requiring like a gold or a silver player to like make up for that with Portal is like asking a little too much, right? Because it's one
no, it's not. They don't play it. They don't get to play it. That's what I'm telling you. They don't. You're a silver player, you're not very good at the game, and you want to play Mesmer because that's what you do in PvE. Guess what? It's a game where you can easily class swap. You instantly have all the gear.
So Mesmer is just not playable in lower tiers?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be
I don't know how much other
fundamentally
people
a little
would
bit
agree
weak.
with that, but it definitely is consistent with your idea.
There's enough. You don't need the fact that we have nine classes, right, and 18 elite specializations is an arbitrary number. We could have been at 8 and 16. No one would be screaming, "We need the 9th! It's got to be there." You're only saying that because you feel that it has to be there because it's already inside. But the actual healthiest way for the game to be is that it's slightly subpar and it's really good and it has utilization in those higher tier matches where there's a lot of communication. And Portal was the best unlocker for that. But otherwise, the thing shouldn't be that strong. What is fundamental to it is unfun. So it shouldn't be emphasized to that degree, all right? And that's genuinely how I feel. And I think ArenaNet knew that for a long time as well, because Mesmer was in a position like that for a long time. And then they started blowing it out the ass. And I don't think the game has been good for it. I really don't. So that's really how I feel about Mesmer. And Mesmer players can still be Mesmer players, and they get to feel like high IQ, like, oh, look how special I am. I'm really good at the game, and I play Mesmer. And, you know,
While
they can
being
have
gold.
that reputation. Well, no.
And spamming CI.
Well, and look, you target the individually frustrating things about it as well. But as a baseline, that's how I feel about Mesmer. I really do. So yeah, I'm pretty nerf heavy when I think about that class, just because I think it's so unfair and it's so.
That kind of
spammy
does solve a lot of the issues, though. You're right. Like, because you have to consider it is a game, and right, fun is more important than balance, right? Like, you could play, right? What is it? I don't know. This is a bad example, but you could play like a game where you're like sitting and it's two snipers across like a trench, right? Each have the same skill set, but you're sitting at a trench and like you're just waiting for each other. Is it fun? No. Is it balanced? Yeah, because you have the same tools, but like at the end of the day, it's about playing a game. So yeah, you might be right about the whole. I don't know, maybe they could change Mesmer's like fundamental, but I think they've been just going in the opposite direction, so it'd be really hard for them to go in a more fun direction. I don't know, maybe
I don't think they know what to do with that.
Because like shatters aren't even like the issue right now, right? But that would be where they could do most of their like reworking. But now people don't even use shatters. It's like mostly kind of like passive like clone spam with the Mirage Mirror trade or whatever.
I think Chrono is probably the most fun thing that has ever been to fight against, right?
It
Chrono
is
has
the
like
most fun, but like
nice, clean shield animations, and like it's clearly defined. It wasn't too clone spammy.
Oh, HOT Chrono.
yeah, HOD.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Right,
If we're talking about like
you know,
miniature Chrono that people play nowadays, that's probably the
No.
least.
No. Exactly. Yeah, I'm talking about like Chrono side note. I think that was the only time that Mesmer's really felt like. I mean, a lot of the other specs have been just massive burst from stealth, just cheesy, unfun.
And I think a lot of Mesmer mains
oriented
agree with you too.
Mess. Yeah. So I don't know. That's how I feel there. What else is really, really, really oppressive? Rev. We haven't really chat's gone on about it, but what does everyone think about Rev?
I think you already kind of like said like notoriety is kind of like the big issue.
Well, I proposed a couple of nerfs for Rev, which were all about. I did a video just talking about nerfs, so not like other areas of specs I'd like to see built up. And obviously, I'm going to look at the assassin DPS playstyle for Rev, and I basically nerfed its damage. And I had an interesting comment kicking back at me, basically saying that's all that Rev's got. So
well, you know why, right?
What do you guys
because
think about that argument?
This is like a silver or gold Rev player, right? This is the issue again, right? Where is a build going to be viable in the majority of what people play it as? So it's kind of like, do you want to delete Rev and Mesmer? You know?
Well,
yes.
I don't want to delete anything, really.
Well, but I think realistically, a lot of classes need to be looked at and actually have some proper reworks focused on them. I think it's perfectly all right to nerf them for a period as long as. And I mean, I don't mean nerf. I mean like gut them, like the current like OP stuff on their build, right? Okay, and then go back and address some of the core issues with the classes that makes them both OP and undervalued, not valuable when they aren't running the OP stuff. Okay. Stuff like Soul Beast. If Sikkim and the Unblockable get nerfed, Soul Beast isn't going to be that useful. Okay, realistically speaking, and I think that's maybe okay, but like they need to make sure that a rework and a like polish of Soul Beast is their priority and stuff like that.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the rumor that their next rework is Hammer on Rev? Obviously, World versus World oriented.
What, in the coming balance patch?
Supposedly, yeah. This is the rumor.
I would be happy, honestly, as long as it was not in line with their other reworks.
I feel like it's going to be a nerf, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, I hope it's a nerf. I really hope it's a nerf.
Which is kind of weird because that's like,
yeah,
it's already not viable in PvP, but obviously it's world for world oriented.
Yeah, it doesn't affect this, but it might, have something. I guess I don't know. You see some hammer revs in PvP. Hammer feels like a pretty dud weapon, honestly. Core guards get to play with it a little bit, but no one else really, right? Oh, Scrapper, I guess. Yeah, never mind.
I reckon if they were to change hammer on rev, they would probably remove the projectile attack on the auto.
Well, you know what the thing is? Hammer is just like the slowest weapon in the game, right?
Yeah.
And like the speed of matches has kind of like power crept so much that just anything that's slow is just not viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried playing a Starfelly for fun earlier today, and I just was like, oh, this is just so slow. Everything feels way too slow, Yeah. And the thing is, I think ArenaNet kind of realized that, but their answer is to speed up the slow things instead of slowing down the fast things, which has led to the world that we're in now, where it feels like the game just moves in the blink of an eye. And that's just 3 years of that happening over and over.
Oh yeah, Hammer Warrior as well. You got to remember Hammer Warrior. Hammer is not even a bad weapon on Warrior, actually.
They buffed the hell out of that as well in a very recent patch. You can't. But some people are like, "Oh, they don't even do anything in balance patches," but that's so unfair. That's not right. That's the perspective you get when you only look at what fundamentally players end up changing. But if you actually look at some of these recent changes, they throw so many buffs into some areas.
Well, then,
this is
what
how
do you think about?
One day you realize something's just boosted to hell, right? Like I feel like Mesmer Scepter was like that for a long time. It just kept getting buffed and buffed and buffed and buffed, and all of a sudden everyone was running it on the
best example is actually Reaper. Like
they
buffed it, they buffed it, they gave it perma quickness.
Yeah,
and,
that was axe,
adds up.
And finally everyone's like, oh my god, this is mental.
And then we're gonna reach a point in PvP, and like I don't know, I haven't played with Reaper. But in a post-rev meta, maybe you could play with Reaper. And, well, obviously not with CI Mirage about, but yeah, like, my goodness, the damage output would just be ridiculous.
Like, you look at Hammer, I think in PvP, the Hammer 5 is now like a 5-second knockdown or something. Like, that's a hell of a...
Yeah, I think Hammer's really good, it's just, it's competing with Shield. And I'm not saying you should nerf Shield, but... It's kind of like the whole role of Warrior is to be a side noder, so it just won't ever use Hammer unless it's using Shield as well.
Yeah, I hope that the next patch as well looks at some of the Berserker stuff that they did, because obviously most of it was pretty duddish, and then the GS burst was like super loaded, then they nerfed it back down to sort of be on par with the others, but like maybe the way to reach Hammer is to look at some of those Berserker things and just sort of find a way to actually have like a team fighting kind of Hammer Berserker or something, that actually So, and again, quite often, like if I look at the underwater rework from last year, obviously it didn't affect PvP or anything, but the devs were very good at, they did the underwater rework, and then for the next like 5 balance patches in a row or something, they kept refining it and kept changing things and so I'd like to see that on the Berserker change, and I'd like to see that in various different areas, right? I'm expecting more rev nerfs, this time hopefully on areas of the class that people actually use on the next patch.
Sword 5, please, ArenaNet. If you're watching, remove the slow and cripple at least. Yeah, the slow and cripple at least, please.
My suggestion for that one was just put a telegraph on it, a longer cast time on it.
Well, no, it needs a major damage nerf realistically, because it's like so stacked. This is actually a thing that ArenaNet has done so much. Like every single rework skill they've kind of done is so stacked. Like so many effects. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much stuff they put in. I think
like Fury and Chill and a mode and a gap close and 2 separate strikes, so it'll go through ages on the first one, and the second one super big damage. It's crazy.
Doesn't the second strike not go through unless the first one hits though? Not that I'm a Sword 5 apologist, but
would it fail on a blind as well? If you're blind on Death Strike, do you not get the flip over?
I couldn't tell you, but not much really blinds at the moment, apart from Mirage, I guess, occasionally. I can't even remember.
I think it does need to hit the first one to hit the second one, but I don't know. I don't think that should be used as the counterplay though, because it has basically no animation.
When it's no thanks, just remove it. Yeah.
To be fair to them, saying the reworks weren't very good. Scrapper rework was a recent one, and none of us are even interested in talking about Scrapper right now, which says to me that it wasn't,
It's because we go to sleep when we talk about it.
I just want to touch one more thing on Rev, and then I'll talk about Scrapper. Okay, there is actually a hidden gem or a hidden thing on Rev that no one really talks about, and that's the F2. Okay, on Shiro.
Yeah,
okay,
I think WP talked about
unblockable 3 boon rip on 600 radius.
Yeah,
Like, what is that? And it hits for like 4 to 5k.
It does, like, it represents a lot of their damage because it's very uncounterplayable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of that damage is because of all the crazy might access, honestly.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's not just that, but it's just the raw damage multipliers that they have in traits. It's so stacked. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that skill because I think that actually epitomizes Rev more than Sword 5. Just how unfun it feels to play against it.
Yeah, I mentioned I wanted that one nerfed as well. I suggested dropping the radius, but I think I was wrong to do that because the idea of the mechanic is the radius is the same. But the idea of the F2 on Herald is it's affecting that point blank AoE area, and it's the same radius whether you're Malix or Glint or whatever. And I think that maybe you don't have the Shiro one, the odd one out. I think you actually affect the actual effect itself and leave the radius consistent with the way that the rest of the skill works is probably the healthy way of doing it. So I think my nerf suggestion was a bit wrong there. But yeah, I don't like that skill either. I like the skill. Obviously, it's fun to crack people down with it, but it's too strong. Right, yeah, what was you going to say about Scrapper?
I'm gonna
have to go after that. Probably.
Scrapper's an interesting one, right? Because they kind of reworked all the gyros, but nothing really changed because it's just become this bunker class, and obviously Bulwark gyro is stupid, Medic gyro is stupid, and all that kind of stuff in low tiers, but it's fairly useless in high tiers because it's so easy to counter.
You can't rotate quick enough.
Yeah, and not bunkers are useless really, because they don't generate kills.
Also, I think that the main issue with Scrapper is that a lot of it is just like a health sponge more than like an evasion.
Yeah.
So actually, Ellie is tankier than Scrapper because in the situations where you can actually kill it, because you can't kill an Ellie in 1v1, you can't kill a Scrapper in 1v1, but when you're 2v1ing is when Ellie's actually better because it scales up, because evading scales better than just actual effective
you could
health.
have 100 people on you. Yeah, you could have 100 people on you, and an evade will keep you there. But
it's what makes Rev so good as well in team fights. The evades.
Yeah. That they can chain so many. Star 5 into Shiro dodge, into regular dodge, Star 3 and shit. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. In fact, I tried to make a Scrapper that was just as tanky as I could possibly imagine earlier in the week, and it would sustain anything, like absolutely anything. But there were situations where when you're outnumbered enough, you get locked down like by the first emob and then the second, and you're just screwed. You can't. But Weaver will just keep evading through and can scale really nicely.
Some of the Scrapper changes are just straight up bizarre, like the Bulwark gyro change, like you soak damage from your allies, but you get Barret. Like it's just bad because you're never going to use it in that instance. Like that skill just needs to be reworked. You can't soak damage your allies because you kill yourself. Like. That and the amount of passive barrier that Scrapper gets, and stuff like that, it sustains a more bruiser orientated build, and I think honestly that's where they should focus Scrapper towards. They have the support option in World v World, which is busted in its own right, but but it was before the patch as well. And then you have a more bruiser orientated build that does some damage. To be fair, Demo Scrapper does put out a lot of damage, just due to raw might uptime and stuff like that. But still, it's ineffective, right? Because there's so much damage from other classes that it's so easy to +1 it just dies.
Yeah.
So I think the Scrapper rework, and in fact, a lot of the reworks they've done, have just been completely ineffective and have kind of been detrimental in some regards. It's a massive shame, really, in my opinion. Massive shame.
Well, hopefully more keep coming.
Also,
the Scrapper well rework was just one of like 2 or 3 that same patch, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think Scrapper is going to see some more stuff in the future. You know, this is actually an interesting thing. They're kind of going for this trend where they're adding trade-offs for running the elite specs, right? You know, that we saw. What was it that we saw last patch? The trade-off.
Rev got a baseline.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're probably going to see something along that line for Scrapper. I imagine Chrono in the future as well. Probably some other specs as well. So I don't know. Like Scrapper at the moment, pretty meh, but it's effective in.
I really like the idea that their trade off for Chrono is they're gonna add a 5th shatter for Core Mesmer, and it's just completely bloated. I love the idea.
You know what I want them to do? You know, like as a big fuck you to Mesmers. Okay, excuse my language. Okay, just remove Distort and put Continuum Split there. Just like, I think that would be absolutely hilarious if they did that.
So Chronos can't distort.
Yeah.
The illusionary persona, make that only for base Mesmers. That would be like the hardest.
Oh,
that's
would
actually a pretty. Yeah, that's a very intelligent one. I think they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that actually makes
That'd
sense.
be a very big deal, actually.
But you have to think about how that translates to the other game types too. And I don't know.
I love the Mesmer main in chat is just like, no, that's so bad.
All right. Well, okay. Anyway, that was fantastic. Thanks very much, guys. But I'm gonna have to get going now.